Welcome to the GreatBase Tennis Podcast. I'm Steve Smith. At the table with me is
Ivan Ozeritz.
Ivan Ozeritz. And then on the phone, we have a regular, Andy Fitzell. And then we have Peter Kobelt, young, 34 years old, Peter Kobelt, a visual, little guy. Everybody say Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Because this episode is to be posted on Christmas Day. And Andy, when you think of Peter, don't you think of a little elf?
Well, I think of more like Will Ferrell in the movie Elf. He's oversized elf. The toilet's a little too small.
With head coach at the University of Nebraska. But before we get into this, the progression to be in that position, let's go back to Columbus. I read where your dad, he worked in Milwaukee, Wisconsin for a long time, right?
Yeah, well, first, thanks for having me on, guys. I appreciate it. But yeah, my dad kind of got started, coaching. It actually started in Cincinnati, Ohio, where he met my mom and where they got married. His old high school coach, Steve Contardi, who actually has a lot of connections to Nick Bollettieri. Two Italian coaches up in Wisconsin. That's where Nick first started, and then he made his way down to Florida. But my dad got dragged down to Cincinnati with Steve Contardi. Steve was my dad's math teacher in Manitowoc, Wisconsin. And after my dad graduated college, he needed a job. He didn't get into medical school, so he went down to University of Cincinnati to study. He got his MBA down there, and he started teaching tennis lessons with Steve Contardi at at Queen City Racket Club. So that's where he met my mom, and then he started. After that, he was down there for a while, and he actually was working a little bit up in Milwaukee, the Milwaukee Country Club up there, which is cool because they have a college tournament there now, the Milwaukee Tennis Classic, every fall. So I got to be a coach there. With my first year as the head coach, I was up there coaching, and it was kind of a cool full circle moment for me, going up there and seeing where my dad first kind of got started coaching.
So are you by birth a cheesehead?
I'm born in Cincinnati, so technically I'm a Bengal, but I have one share. I'm a stockholder in the Green Bay Packers, so I'm a cheesehead. Yeah, that's in the NFL. That's team A, and then the Bengals are team B. That's for sure. But yeah, I'm a cheesehead.
Oh, there's this Steve Contardi. He one time asked Nick Bollettieri, why are you so nice to me? And he said, "What's your last name?" And he goes, "You're Italian." But no, he's obviously made major contributions to tennis. You mentioned, is it Manitowoc, Wisconsin?
Manitowoc, Wisconsin. Yep.
Yeah, I believe that's where Riney Meyer's from. I worked for a company, All American Sports, and Riney Meyer was a fifth grade teacher, and he was the go-between. If obviously older people would get a kick out of this, is that Harry Hopman and Nick Bollettieri both worked at the same summer facility, Amherst College, All American Sports. Nick was in charge of the adults, and Mr. Hopman was in charge of the juniors. What was the name of that prep school? Because Nick had that camp in Wisconsin. I'm trying to think.
I couldn't say that. But
from that, your dad ended up being the director of the Bollettieri franchise in Paris for a while, Paris, France, right?
Yeah, that's some good digging there. So yeah, when I was I think I had just turned 1. We were on a plane to Paris, out in the suburbs in Plaisir, France. I think there's a future out there now. But yeah, we were out there for 9 or 10 months. My sister Maddie, who's the assistant coach here at Nebraska, she was born there, so which is cool. And then about 9 months into it, I think something happened with the guy that was in charge of running the club, and things fell apart, and we wound up back in Cincinnati about a year later. So
I really like Cincinnati. the Reds. Yeah, no, I think that's a great town.
Oh, sorry. I didn't realize Maddie was over there with you. That's awesome.
Yeah, she was born over there, and I think if my mom obviously loved it there, and my dad could speak a little French, so he didn't mind either. But if the club wouldn't have closed down, I think I would have been a little French boy. So a little French.
No, but I mean, I didn't realize she was at Nebraska as well.
Oh yeah, yep.
Family Fair. That's cool.
Yep. So she's going into her second year here too, which is awesome. She actually, yeah, our offices, are right next to each other, and we, it's nice. She lives in the same apartment complex as I do, so when our family comes in town, it's easy for everybody. And I think as you get older, especially here in the States, it's pretty common for your family to kind of spread out and kind of go their own direction and do their own thing a little bit. And it's nice to have some family, especially immediate family, really close by. You can still say, hey, let's grab a bite to eat, or hey, let's grab a coffee, or let's go do this, or let's go do that. So yeah, it's nice to have that around for sure.
That's cool.
Oh, that's great. I was thinking of the trivia question from Cincinnati. The 3 top 10 players. Your dad would know all this. Tony Trabert, Barry McKay, and Talbert. That's the question. Talbert is Tony Trabert, Barry McKay, and Bill Talbert. Bill Talbert. He wrote those great books on directionals, singles and doubles. Amazing stuff. Your dad, he's got some height on you. I know he's better looking, but you're the little guy compared to him, right?
Yep. I wasn't able to catch him. He's 6'9", and I'm 6'7", so he's still the tallest Kobelt in the family. My brother's 6'5" too, so he's still holding the crown.
Yeah, I know. I had a chance to meet Alex and do some video work. Same thing with Maddie. How tall is Maddie?
I think she's 5'9" or 5'10". So for a woman, that's pretty good, I'd say.
You have to ask about Paul. I remember telling you that, or chirping where your parents changed the spelling of their names so you could spell their names, Paul and Paula. With she's in medical world. She's a nurse of nurses, right?
Yeah, she's actually got a really cool job. She just got her doctorate, and now she transitioned from the job that she was doing, and now she's got a really big job in the hospital trying to figure out this opioid epidemic. They're trying to figure out a way for the hospitals to be able to provide health care for the individuals that come in who are struggling with addiction. And, the system now isn't very conducive to recovery, and she's trying to help bridge the gap there a little bit. So she's super busy doing that. And yeah, I'm sitting here worrying about, who can put the ball in the court more, and she's actually dealing with some real problems in the world. So I always have to take a step back, and when things aren't going, I always call her, and she vents to me, and then I'm like, okay, I'm fine, everything's good. So
yeah, that's well put. That's well put. Highly educated, PhD, MBA, and we'll get to that. But we know you went to the School of Hard Knocks because you spent 5 years with the legendary Ty Tucker. Here's my first question, most important question is, and I hope these members of the family are still alive and well, but I was fortunate enough to be a guest at your parents' home. I was traveling with Austin Krajicek, and we were going from one challenger to the next, and the challenger wasn't in Columbus, but Champaign to wherever, Knoxville to Champaign. So we ended up in your lovely home. I know my son Connor loved being there because your mother treated him so nice, but tell us about your cats. I mean, they have good size too. Are they alive and well?
No, so they were actually tennis cats too. They both have passed, unfortunately, but they were great cats. They were the first animals we had outside of some fish. But we before my dad kind of started his business running a tennis club, we would go to all the clubs and practice. And one of the clubs had a stray cat, and she had a whole litter of kittens. So obviously we went there, and then we saw the kittens, and we just begged to take one or two of them home, and we ended up taking two of them home. So they were born at a tennis club, so we gave them tennis names. One of them was Tommy Haas, and the other one was Moya. So no, they both passed away. 5, 8, 10 years ago. So it's been a little bit, but
Wow.
we do have some. My mom's a cat lady, so we have two more now at the house, so which is nice when we come back home. So
Tommy Haas and Moya, Carlos Moya. Is that right?
Yep.
So you went with some good-looking
like
guys.
They didn't look like tennis players. My mom left the street.
I remember you telling me that they couldn't go outside. I mean, for our listeners, these were some fat cats.
Some big boys, that's for sure.
Yeah. I just think that's a reflection of how nice your mother was. Somebody must have kept feeding those cats. I mean, they just, you being 6'7", your dad being 6'10", that'll catch your eye when you meet someone tall like that. But those cats, I just remember like, whoa, they had a completely different look.
Yep, they were some big cats, that's for sure.
I got to digress here for a minute. Dave Anderson, I tease people that I only use 2 of his lines, but he uses all of my lines. One is when he meets someone who's really tall, like Peter at 6'7", I say, yeah, I get along really well with Kobelt because my ego is 6'8". But another one is kid has long hair, and Anderson will say we have free haircuts on Friday. But Anderson's been a guest. Peter, I don't know if you've met him personally, but you certainly know his name through Connor and such. But Andy, Mr. Paul Kobelt, he's a graduate of the USTA High Performance. What comment do you have on that?
Yeah, welcome to the club. I mean, Davey Anderson, you still got to get there. Got some studying to do.
Peter, that's kind of an inside joke, but we found out that Anderson has not attended that program. So,
oh, wow.
Yeah, we think he needs to refund a lot of people. Tell us about your dad's tennis business in New Albany.
Yeah, so in 1992, my dad was we were back in Cincinnati. Just moved back from France, and he got a call. Steve got a call from Marty Reeson. There was this brand new country club that was opening up on the northeast side of Columbus, and Marty needed a head pro to come and run the club. And he said, "I need a guy." So Steve said, "I got you, your man." And my dad and my mom and me and my sister, we moved up there a few months later, and I was home. So from 1992, when the New Albany Country Club opened up, that's where we lived, and that's where we were. My family, my mom and dad still live there. My dad doesn't work at the New Albany Country Club any longer, but one of the things that the country club didn't provide, maybe the only things that country club didn't provide, was indoor tennis in the wintertime. So my dad tried real estate, and he didn't like that, and he's like, "Well, I'm a tennis guy, I'm a tennis coach." So he took on a big project and opened up his own indoor and it's now an outdoor tennis program too, just on some of the public courts there in New Albany. He leases them from the park, and he bubbles 5 of the courts in the winter, and in the summer he takes them down, and they have a nice outdoor program there too. So that's what he's doing. So I feel like that was why Connor and I's relationship was always great, because we got 2 dads that are big into the tennis world, and talk tennis 24/7 and love the game. And it's hard as a kid when you're growing up, all you talk about is tennis, breakfast, you go hop in the car, tennis, you come back from whatever, tennis, and you sit down at dinner and it's more tennis. But sitting back now in my chair, you realize how expensive tennis is, and you realize how much time and sacrifices your family has to make in order for you to go to the tournaments and to practice with the right players and to have the right rackets and to, make sure your shoes are cool and do all the little small things that you don't really understand or you might overlook as a kid. But
yeah, no, it's nice that you say that about your parents. With we'll backtrack on that, but there's 3 of you. That's Maddie and then your younger brother Alex all had long journeys in tennis. But let's back up a little bit. I remember talking to your dad about Marty Reeson. I certainly met him and watched him play. Read his autobiography. Was around him quite a bit because he spent some time in Boca. But he was at Northwestern and he played both tennis and basketball, and he was like really solid almost to the age of 40. Did you spend time?
Yeah.
Did you spend time around him? I'm sure I talked about that in the past.
Yeah, it was mostly when I was younger. Before the years up until I was 10 or maybe 12, and then I think he transitioned out to California, where he lives now. I think he's out there in the Santa Barbara area. I saw he came to one of our matches. We played at Santa Barbara last year, and he came out and watched, which was cool. My dad and my brother were out there too, so they came, and it was a nice little reunion for all of us. But yeah, no, having Marty around was great. He obviously had a lot of connections to the tennis world. He was a fantastic tennis player. I don't know how many Grand Slams did he win, but he was very successful, and I think he was one of the figures that pushed me to continue playing basketball as a kid instead of just kind of focusing in on tennis. I loved basketball and I always wanted to play, and I think my dad and my mom were always open to it, but just being around Marty and him, knowing that he was able to do it, I always felt like, okay, then if he can do it, I can do it. So
tell us how long were you with basketball? I mean, how long did you play?
I played all the way until I was 18.
Wow.
I started for my high school basketball team my junior and senior years of high school. So I didn't play a full year of tennis like you'd normally see in today's recruits until I was a freshman in college. So I was definitely behind the curve going into school, and I had no idea how good I could be or how good I was going to be or any of those things. I just was super happy to be at a place like Ohio State.
So you think behind the curve, but I mean, all that time with basketball, there's other skills that you develop that are going to help your tennis game.
Sure.
Just, athleticism. So.
No, yeah. And I think looking back, I really developed, like you said, a different type of hand-eye coordination, the explosiveness that you have to have in basketball along with the endurance, but, being able to jump and then sprint, and, you have to be coordinated to dribble and pass. And, in high school, if you're not, like, you got all your friends up there in the stands, and you'll hear about it the next day at class if you do something goofy out there. So,
yeah.
But no, looking back, it's, I think part of my game and why I was a semi-decent tennis player was because I was tall, but also because I was a pretty good athlete for my size. So I think I got a lot of that from basketball, and I was able to pick up on a lot of things in tennis because of, the other sports that I played as a kid. So
before you were a two-sport athlete, did you do other sports when you were really young?
Yeah. So, I mean, I played golf. I wasn't a bad golfer. I played golf all the way through middle school. I made in our school, we had a middle school golf team, which is crazy to think about, but I made the middle school golf team. And I also played a lot of baseball. I did that up until 7th or 8th grade too. I travel around and play travel baseball, but the schedules with tennis and baseball always conflicted. So you do these travel league baseball leagues, and you spend all this money, and my parents are like, this doesn't make any sense. Each at bat's like $50. So
how old were you when you started tennis?
Oh, there's pictures of me playing tennis from a super young age. My dad I think there's a picture of me holding the racket straight away, right after I was born. It's a little tiny one, but my dad will tell you, he had me swinging a racket as young as, as soon as I could stand up. So, yeah. But tennis has always been there. That's been the one constant for sure. And I think that's a big reason why I'm doing what I'm doing today.
Yeah.
With the basketball, you go to public or private high school?
Public, yeah. New Albany High School. So those were
nice place.
Yeah, those were some really cool really fun and cool years. It was, and I think that's one of the reasons why I potentially did well in college too. Was, you know, when you're a freshman in high school, you're playing in front of a relatively big crowd, and for basketball, you get used to playing in front of people, and I think that's a big thing to be able to learn. Like, it's a skill you have to learn. You got to be comfortable with yourself. You got to, you know, so there was games where, you know, hundreds of people were there. There's a game where thousands of people are there. So, you know, when you're a kid and those age, at that age, you're so formidable, and the opinions of other people really matter, and you want to be good, you want to be cool. And, you know, I think basketball kind of got me ready for a lot of things in life, just because it threw me out there and you know, to the wolves a little bit. And it got me that experience of, you know, performing and under pressure in front of a big crowd.
Were you the tallest guy on your team? Were you power forward, center?
I was the tallest guy on my team, but I wanted nothing to do with that number 5 spot. I'll tell you what, and you know, I was a skinny little guy at the time. I got into the weight room. I just started getting into the weight room, but by no means did I want to go into the paint. All the teams in Columbus, Ohio, who didn't have a true center would put in some offensive linemen or defensive linemen. And I didn't want any part of going in there trying to box those guys out. That was no fun at all. So I played like that, like Kevin Pittsnoggle, you know, West Virginia type of player, where I kind of would pick and pop and pick and roll. We had more of like an open style offense where I kind of played at the top of the post, and they would kind of use me as a swing, like 3-4 player, and it made it difficult to play us, because I could kind of drive a little bit, and I could also shoot, and I could jump a little bit and grab some rebounds and block some shots. But if I needed to go in there and do some dirty work, I wasn't about it. Definitely not at that age. So
with hoops, you definitely learn to be on a team and work in unison. Could you comment on that? Because a lot of junior tennis players, especially as we go forward, so few have been on a team. All they do is specialize and just play one sport.
Yeah. For me, it was, I loved it. I loved it. I loved coming into the gym every day and being there. You know, I went to school at New Albany from kindergarten all the way through 12th grade. So a lot of those guys that were on the team with me were my best friends that have been there, you know, just as long as I've been. You know, they knew me inside and out. It was, you know, practice was fun. The games are even more fun. But, you know, when you lose and the coach doesn't draw up the play for you, or you think you should be getting the last shot, or, you know, one of your teammates makes a mistake, you got to learn how to, you know, get through that sort of thing. And it teaches you, you know, a lot of the values that you need to have to be successful in life. I think you gotta, you know, when things are going great, you gotta be able to pick up the people, or you gotta be able to handle the ups, and when things are going poorly, you know, you gotta be able to pick up your teammate and keep the team going in the right direction. And I just think when you're on a team, you get to experience a lot of different components of sports that you don't get necessarily in an individual environment. And I'm not sure, you know, how much of a role that played into my career, but I think it definitely helped when it was my turn to be a leader at Ohio State. I think it gave me I was able to see how things worked before I even got to college, and what some of the better leaders did on my teams, and how selfless and the sacrifices they made. And I was like, well, I'm going to do that now, you know, here. Now I have a second try at this.
With your players at the University of Nebraska cross-training, I never was on Nick Baltieri's payroll. I never worked for Nick, but I was around Nick in so many different ways, different times. You know, I've been doing this now 50 years. But I used to love to go down to his facility. I lived in Tampa for 15 years, and Tommy Haas, not the cat, but Tommy Haas, the German tennis player, I used to just love to go watch him play basketball. because he did it for fitness. And I don't really know basketball, but I would have thought that, gee, this guy could play at a high level. I know that Marty Fish, for example, and Roddick, Marty Fish, so it was so coordinated at, I think it was Boca Prep, where they were doing that for fitness. Do you have your players in Nebraska play basketball?
That's actually a touchy subject. So I always encourage them. You know, I think you just learn. You know, tennis is a game of coordination too. You know, you got to be able to do something different with your legs, and you're doing one thing with your legs, you're doing another thing with your upper body and your eyes. You got to be able to move your body and do different things on the court. And I think basketball is a great, secondary tool, to train those things. But we had one of our boys on our team. I told him all to go play basketball, and I got a phone call a few days later. One of our boys broke his finger. The ball stubbed him right in the finger, and he was, unfortunately, he had to miss almost the entire fall with a fractured finger. So I was like, all right, we're not playing anymore.
Yeah.
You think you're doing the team a favor, and then you end up not doing one. So, but I think basketball is a great game. I think it's one of the greatest games that you can play as a kid. It teaches you a lot of different skill sets individually, physically, but also, the team dimension of it and the individual part of it as well. You really got to focus on your game and the different aspects you got to improve on, a lot like tennis. So,
the one thing with basketball is not to talk about tournaments and travel and such, but it's just the ball you can play in your driveway. It's not so expensive. I mean, we're always telling kids they should be able to, in tennis, go out and do a driveway workout without the ball. But, when a kid is standing at the foul line, at standstill shot, static balance, they know they have to make the shot. And the basketball hoop lets them know if, are they making shots or are they missing shots? I know my son Connor, who you played with at Ohio State, we for 15 years in Tampa, we had a hoop at HCC. We had one in our driveway, but they didn't really play much basketball. But I had a coach who was from Peru, and our group played soccer pretty much every day. So for a tennis player, Connor got to the point where he could play a little bit soccer. But I remember saying when he got to Florida State, he said he'd wish he had played some basketball because the coach at that time, he's still there. You probably know him well, Dwayne Holquist. Those guys would cross train and they would play some soccer and play some basketball. But it is true, if people haven't played their sport, there's a good chance for injury.
That's for sure.
The player probably broke his finger, probably hadn't played much basketball, right?
He had not. So, yeah. But live and you learn. That's all right. He's a good kid, and he'll be back. He'll be fine. So,
yeah. Well, I think one thing about injury, to digress, is that I think when people get injured, that's when they find out how much they really love the game, when they actually are forced to sit out. I have one more comment on basketball, the connection between the bench and the brain. We always talk about that. So like when you were a freshman, you probably didn't play on the varsity, right?
No, I did not.
Yeah, so the progression. Did you play JV or did you?
So we had a freshman team, and then we had a JV team, and then we had the varsity team. When I was a freshman, I was just on the freshman team, and I did good enough for them to suit me up for the JV squad here and there. And obviously, I wasn't good enough for varsity yet. But what was cool was when I was in 8th grade, we had our varsity team was really good, and I wasn't on the team yet. I was on the middle school team in 8th grade, and I traveled to go watch them play O.J. Mayo when O.J. Mayo was playing for North College Hill in Cincinnati. New Albany played against them in the state tournament, so I got to watch that. And the next year, who did they play? Why am I blanking on his name? The next year, I was a freshman. They didn't ask me to travel either, but they played, I think it was Dayton Dunbar, and there was a really good player there who played for the Miami Heat. He also played for the Buckeyes. I'm blanking on his name right now, but he was also a fantastic player. So those are the kinds of experiences that I was like, whoa, like this is really cool. Like I want to be a part of that and do I want to be able to play against those guys too. So, Columbus was a little bit of a hotbed for basketball at the time. The Jared Bellinger boy played at Northridge, in Columbus, and I remember going to a few summer league scrimmages where he was there, and I got to watch him play, and I thought that was really cool because he was the talk of the town, and he was going to Ohio State, and but yeah, I mean, just being on those teams was the coolest thing in the world for me at the time. So.
No exposure. I remember I grew up with a kid, Johnny Alberg. We were hockey players, but his father was a vice president of Syracuse University. And that was just, basically 20 minutes away from where I was living. And I will never forget, I knew nothing about basketball, but watching Dave Bing, who went on to be a great NBA player, you can just see athleticism. It just jumps right at you when you watch people play basketball. But the bench and the brain, though, is a lot of times tennis kids, mom and dad, they can just keep writing checks. I think it's very powerful to sit on the bench because and I had a basketball coach tell me one time that it's actually a good thing. They thought that was one of the challenges of tennis is that you couldn't have a kid take a timeout, sit him down for a few minutes and say, your man's beating you this way and that way, and this is what you got to do differently. So did you ride the bench at all?
I did ride the bench a little bit, but I was, I felt like I did a pretty good job. I worked hard. I did as much of the stuff as I could in the summer. And, I kind of figured out I was one of the better players and I wasn't going to ride the bench too much, but there were some times where I deserved it. And, I had a coach that wasn't scared to bench me at all either too. So, Coach Sam Davis, kind of a legend there in Central Ohio. I think he's still coaching. I think he's on the women's side at a school there in Columbus, Ohio, but legendary coach and was an unbelievable coach to play for. And he was absolutely not scared to sit you down when you weren't doing your job for sure. And I think it is a great teaching tool. You got, when you're out there doing it in front of all your friends and your family during the game, and it's embarrassing, and it's you get angry when you mess up and then the coach, they blow the whistle, they call timeout, you're out, down, so it's happening all in front of everyone, so, it teaches you quickly, like, hey, like if I don't want that to happen again. So I gotta, do better when I get my chance next time. And you start to slowly do that. And I think, I don't know how you'd implement that into college tennis, but if there was a way to do it to make it more of like a team aspect where you could maybe sub a guy in here or there, like you have a seventh player where you could call a timeout and you could sub one in. I think that would make college tennis even more fun. But I don't know how that would look or how that would get ran through the legislation here in college tennis. But I'm all for that type of stuff. I think that stuff would be a lot of fun. So
I was going to ask you, Pete, how old were you when you first hit the 6 foot mark? Like 9?
That's a good question. That's a good question. I think so. I wasn't always the biggest kid. I remember when I mostly remember because of basketball, but because when I first got out for the middle school basketball team in 6th grade, it was 7th grade. I was trying out to be like a small forward slash guard. I hadn't grown yet.
Okay.
So it was actually great for me because I was able to develop some hand skills, some dribbling skills, some passing skills, working from the top of the court instead of not just some tall, gangly, goofy guy that stood at and they passed to. So I think when I hit my big growth spurt where I grew 6 or 7 inches, that was in between 7th and 8th grade. When I came back in 8th grade, that's when I transitioning more to the bigger slots. And I remember being goofy there for about 1.5 years or 2 years where I was trying to still find my way a little bit. But I think if I remember right, those are the years where I grew up. I'll probably have to ask my mom that question. But
sure, coaches were pumped about it.
Well, they saw my dad and they're like, grow. He's got to grow sometime. And they're probably all looking at their watches like, come on.
Yeah. Yeah, let's go.
It'd be nice to have $1 for every time you and your father were asked, did you play basketball? I mean,
I know, right?
you just take for granted. So did basketball become a family affair? Did Maddie and Alex play as well?
My sister tried to. She played a little bit in middle school, but she didn't like it as much as I did, and neither did my brother. So they both tried, but I don't know. I loved it. I would come home, from school. School would end at 2:30. I would take the bus home. I'd run inside. I'd throw my backpack on the ground. I'd chug a glass of milk, and then I'd run outside and I would shoot hoops for an hour, and I'd come back in, have another glass of milk, and then I'd go back outside and hit some tennis balls against the garage or shoot some more hoops. Like, that's all I did.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't hang out with too many friends. I played a little bit of the video game, later in the night once everyone kind of finished their homework and stuff. But I would shoot and I would shoot and I would shoot. I just, something about shooting the ball and watching it go in, or hearing the net snap when it was nothing but net. You visualize yourself shooting the game-winning shot. I don't know how many times I did that, but I always thought I made every shot was the game-winning shot. So I remember those days. They were awesome. They were fun. It was just me and the basketball hoop. Sometimes I'd drag my brother out there and make him pass to me, like I was in the corner getting ready to shoot. That's where it kind of evolved a little bit. So I bullied him into doing that. I couldn't get my sister to do that ever, but my brother would do it. But I loved that. Was I mean, you ask my mom or my dad, and I would be out there all day.
Sounds like we need to drink more milk, guys. Turn the clock back.
I was going to say, yeah, good marketing.
Man. Oh, I drank a ton of milk as a kid. Looking back, I don't know how I did it, but.
With birth order, I'm always interested in birth order, so many different factors, but how much older are you than Maddie and how much older than Alex?
So I'm 16 months older. 16 months older than my sister. And then my brother he was born in 96, but he's 6.5 years younger than I am. So, sister and I, but then my brother, there was a bigger gap. So
the term is you and Maddie would be Irish twins, if you're that close. Yeah. But so 6.5 years, did Alex listen to you?
Yeah, he listened to me. I think it was tough, because we were the gap was big enough for us to not have a lot in common all the time. I was like either in high school and he was in elementary school or whatever it may be. So, we would hang out every day and do stuff, but our friend groups, it was just when you're that young, the age group difference is big, but we would throw football out in the front yard. We would, he'll tell you stories where I would bully him. We would play tackle football in the front yard. I would just tackle him the whole time until he cried and ran inside. But yeah, we'd hit together on the tennis balls off the garage door at our house there in New Albany. I think my dad had to replace both of the garage doors because of the tennis balls. That was before they had these colored tennis balls, and like the red ones or the green ones or the orange ones.
Transitional,
you could hit against the garage without breaking the door. So we definitely did some damage to the garage door, and but yeah, we did a lot together. We played a lot of tennis together. We played basketball together. We football out in the front yard together. So
supposedly you have a better chance siblings listening to one another if there's more than a 4-year gap. How about for yourself? Was it ever a choice that you might pursue college basketball instead of college tennis?
So if I'm being 100% honest, like I liked basketball more than I liked tennis when I was in high school. I don't know if that was just because, people came to watch the basketball games and I couldn't get, 5 of my best friends to come watch a tennis match. But I love basketball, but, there was a few times in the court where I was like, okay, I can't play college basketball. There was just a few times where, there was a guy in front of me, and he, I was ready playing defense, and the next thing you know, is blink of an eye, he was right by me going up and he was dunking, and I'm just like, there's just nothing I could have done to do anything about that. So there was a few times where I'm like, okay, like I love basketball. It's a great sport. I enjoy it a lot, but if I have a much better chance to do something in college with tennis, and I learned that over time. And I think I had one offer to play basketball in college. I think it was at Jensen. They offered me to play tennis and walk on the basketball team there, but I started getting a few more inquiries about college tennis that were much more serious, and I was like, well, I'd much rather do that than go to Denison and play tennis and some basketball. So I learned basically 3 or 4 times in the basketball court where I said, yep, basketball isn't going to work out
Well,
for the lack of physical gifts that I had, and I was okay with that. So
yeah, and it comes down to genetics. You were gifted, but there's just so many different levels of that.
There's some things I couldn't wrap my head around. I was just like, I couldn't do it. I'd go into the driveway and I'd try and practice it, and how does he do it that quickly? Like, how does that work? I remember, like, I got to get stronger. I got to do this, and I just couldn't do it. So I'm just like, well, it is what it is. What it is.
I thought you were going to say, yeah, I just couldn't jump.
I could jump, but they were way better and way higher and way quicker than I could. I needed to gallop and walk up, and I could do it, but I needed a lot of space and a lot of time to do it. So,
obviously everybody on the line here and people listening know that I've really been involved with developmental tennis, and 50 years teaching tennis. I don't think I've taught a dozen kids. You'd be somebody I've worked with who could stuff a basketball. I've taught a lot of kids who could stuff a tennis ball, but not stuff a basketball. How old were you when you could dunk a basketball?
I remember the first day I dunked a basketball. I was at my friend's house. The Williams family, Ben, Brian, Nate, Williams, the 3 brothers. I played basketball and tennis with all of them. They're a family that played basketball and tennis. So great family. Stephen Williams, one of our teammates at Ohio State, was cousins with them. So that turned out to be a fun relationship. But I remember going in the summer, we'd go over there. They had a tennis court and a basketball court, like a hybrid. So we'd go over and the mom would cook us, hot dogs and hamburgers, and we'd play tennis and basketball all day. And I remember just looking up at the basketball hoop one time. I'm like, I think I can dunk this. And all right, Pete, we've seen you 100 times. And I went up there and I just did it. So I think that was my sophomore year of high school where I finally was able to do it, not just for the first time. And then I remember my junior year of high school, the girl I was talking to at the time, I asked her if she was coming to the game. It was senior night. And she's like, I don't know. I was like, well, I'm going to dunk in this game. So you're going to want to be there. So that was my pickup line. And sure enough, we're playing Mount Vernon and senior night, and it's a close game. And I see the guy I'm guarding, he's popping up to the top of the key, and I see the eyes of the guy passing the ball, and I picked the pass off, and it's me in the hoop. And I said, I'm going to do it. So I go up there and I take my time. I think I might have traveled. If you look at the video, I think I might have traveled, but I went up there and 2-hand dunked it in front of the home crowd. So I remember that out of all my athletic achievements, that was the thing that totally was like rocked my world. Like I still say that gave me this crazy wave of energy. I don't know how or why, but that's how it happened. That was my first dunk in a game. So that was junior year.
That's an awesome story. I'll tell you a funny story.
Cool.
I know Andy knows it well, is that Vic Braden, his favorite sport was basketball. He's 5'6". And I was coaching a VIP lesson. It was Artis Gilmore. And I told him he was too too short to hit down on the serve. He said, no one has ever told me I'm too short. So Vic was doing research with, he was doing a lot of things with Wilson and all athletes, football, basketball, volleyball players, athletes from track and field. So there's a film of Braden, Artis Gilmore stuffs the basketball, and then Vic stuffs the basketball, and back and forth. And you see Braden, at that time, Vic was in his late 40s, and the camera fades away, and Vic is on a trampoline. So he's just, the trampoline is right next to the basketball hoop. He's just, the close-up looked like Vic was dunking the basketball. But I think many people, I think for myself, hockey's still number one with me. I've been tennis forever, but I tell people I'm just a transfer addict, is I just took all my energy or passion for hockey and just put it into tennis. But I think this is one thing to be said too about misery enjoys company. Heard it said many times. So say a group of kids, any team sport, say soccer, they lose and then they go to Pizza Hut with their buddies. A tennis kid loses and it's a lonely knockout sport, and they get in the van with their parents. I think there's a lot to be said for surviving tennis. I think it really takes some stick-to-itiveness to stay in tennis. There's stats that are overwhelming, shocking at how many people quit tennis after they play their first tournament. The parents don't know. The parents don't know. They're not prepared for tournament play. They sign them up for a tournament, and the kids don't come back.
That's one of the toughest parts about tennis for sure. So,
let me read this off with your sister Maddie. I know I had a chance to meet her. I've got down here, SU player, Syracuse University, Syracuse captain, played number 1 singles and doubles, had a national ranking of 32, played pro tennis, won 12 events. She returned to Syracuse as was the assistant coach. Actually, someone that my son Connor knows well, Mikhail, they grew up with Jackie Calla. She now is the assistant coach at Syracuse University.
Yep.
With your sister wasn't there at this time, but my mom, a widow and elderly, I would go and see her, but I remember spending 3 days with Luke Jensen. That's somebody, and thinking about this podcast, is that he'd be a great guest on a podcast. What a character! What comes to your mind with just saying this on behalf of your sister? Tell us a Luke Jensen story.
Lefty overhead. That's the story right there. So no, I just remember. So as a kid, when my dad was working at the New Albany Country Club, Marty Reeson would bring in, every summer they'd have a exhibition with, some professional tennis players, and they bring in someone different every year. And I remember they brought in Luke and Murphy Jensen one year, and obviously both of those guys have amazing aura about them. Their energy's, just different. Their passion for not just playing tennis, but also giving back to tennis was very evident too at the time. And that was kind of when, we first got to meet them as we were kids. And then my dad always kept in touch with Luke, and he came back a few more times to the club when we were there. And eventually he got the job there at Syracuse, and he gave my dad a call, and that was basically the end of that. My sister was going to Syracuse. So, but yeah, she went there, and every day they practiced serving and volleying and lefty overhead. So that was something that they did every day. And I remember talking to my sister about it all the time, and she'd come back and we would hit from time to time, and her lefty overhead was better than probably half of the guys on our team's righty overhead. So, but I found it amazing that you could pick that up so quick. Your non-dominant hands hitting lefty overhead. She never hit any lefty serves, but she can still hit a great lefty overhead today. So,
at Luke Jensen, the movie Cool Hand Luke, his nickname was Dual Hand Luke. I was at the French Open in '84 when he was playing as a junior. He was playing doubles with Patrick McEnroe, and he was serving left-handed, right-handed. I was just shocked. And I mean, he could serve big time both ways.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, they're from a small town in Michigan. They have a Christmas tree farm with their mother has to be the funniest person in the world. I was at a tournament. It was a wild card for the Australian Open. And my recollection is she was running the tournament up in Georgia at Peachtree, at Fifth Fancy Place. And I was there with Austin Krajicek. And I go in, and it's the time when Connor was playing Ohio State, and I had on a Ohio State sweatshirt or cap or warm up, whatever. And she was calling me Woody Hayes' grandfather. Now, for our listeners, Woody Hayes was a legendary football coach. And she's so funny. But I never met Murphy, but here's a story. Vic Braden, he hosted the Sport Goofy tournament. And some kid in one of the townhouses, Andy, out at Go to Gaza, is
I know the story. Yeah,
the mattress. And so some kid sets a mattress on fire, and all these years go by, many, many years. And now he's a professional player. He says, Mr. Braden, I need to talk to you for a minute. And he just said, it's a cool story. He goes, I need to apologize. You remember the Sport Goofy tournament? Yeah. He goes, well, I was the kid who set the mattress on fire. No, I coached a kid, Bobby Malone, who grew up with the Jensens. And I told Luke, I said, yeah, Luke, I taught a guy to teach tennis who used to own you. And of course, that's not the case. Bobby was a very good player, retriever from the baseline, never missed. And he just started laughing. He goes, Bobby Malone, he used to hit a ground stroke, run backwards, and run up the fence. I mean, those guys are so funny. But that must have been an experience. She's play all 4 years for him?
Yeah, I know he moved on. I think he might have moved on and took another job. Maybe it was my sister's senior year. I'm not 100% sure, but she was there with him for 3 years, and she absolutely loved it. And I think that's why when, she started, coaching again, I think that was her second stop. I think her first stop as an assistant was, oh man, there's a great liberal arts school in Columbus, Division III, just on the north side of town. She started there, but then her first major role as an assistant was back at her alma mater there in Syracuse. I think that was a big reason why she went back, because she really enjoyed her time there, and I know Luke was a big reason for that. So
that's good. Lefties. Speaking of lefties, little brother had an advantage. What do you think about being a lefty?
Lefty's got it good. That's for sure, especially in the game that we play. I think, obviously he's 6'6",
that helps too.
So that's never a bad thing either. But, I think a lot of guys just don't get to see that very often. So it's hard to prepare for a match like that. Hard to practice, returning that serve. It's hard enough practicing against someone that's right-handed that does that, but left-handed, it creates a lot of some mismatches there, and just an innate advantage straight away every match you play. Basically no one's prepared to play you, essentially. So 6'5", 6'6" lefty, who can crank it, he's always going to have a chance to. You're always going to have a chance to. You're going to start with an advantage in the match, just about every match you play. So
yeah. Stan Smith used to say that they should have tournaments for lefties. They should play in their own tournaments. The U.S. Open was run 10 years in a row by lefties. I
didn't know that.
Arantes, Vilas, Connors, and McEnroe. So four players over 10 years consecutively. But for Ohio kid to play at Ohio State, that's such a big deal. Talk to us about redshirting. You and your brother both redshirted.
Yep. So obviously you kind of know my background. I played basketball and other sports growing up. So, for me, when Ty and Justin wasn't the assistant yet, but he was on the team actually. But when Ty offered me the chance to play there, it was like a dream come true. Ohio State was, I loved Ohio State. I watched all the football games, all the basketball games. I used to cry every time they lost. You know, I would always ask my mom when the next basketball game was, and she used to lie to me and not tell me because she didn't want to have to deal with me crying all night after we'd lose again. So, but Scooney Penn and Michael Redd and Matt Sylvester, all those great players that, Terrence Diallo, Greg Oden, all of them, those guys really motivated me to play basketball. But so when Ty called and offered me a chance to play Ohio State, it was a no-brainer, and I gladly took it. But I most certainly didn't know what I was getting into. They were a fine-tuned machine at the time. They just come off their first NCAA final down in Texas A&M. There, they lost to USC in a heartbreaker, but the Ohio State tennis machine was up and running at that time. So I kind of got in there, and I'm like, whoa, like they treat tennis, they look at tennis like totally different than I did as a kid, and there was a big adjustment for sure for me that I had to make, and I had some maturing to do. I had some physical work I had to do. I had to get used to how they worked and trained every day. I played a lot of tennis, but I didn't train anywhere near like how they did. So for me, the redshirt year was absolutely critical for me. It gave me a time to kind of get used to all that, to make all the mistakes I needed to make. The first year away from home in college, so it let me kind of be a college kid for a year without having to worry about, playing at a program like that. You realize quickly there's a lot of pressure. When you're winning the Big Ten every year and playing for these big trophies, the expectations are high, and, not really having any of those expectations before, it just changes your mentality pretty quickly. And so for me, the red shirt year was not only important for me at the time, but, by the end of my career, I think it was a big reason why I was able to do well as well too, and kind of helped me transition onto the pro tour. So,
and like your little brother, obviously I'll go through this, but you became where you ranked 1 in the country in singles and 2 in doubles, and I have this down to 139 and 30 overall, most doubles matches won for Ohio State, tied for most wins in the season, 44. But you and your brother, you play, obviously, to have won so many doubles matches. You played doubles right away, but you had the School of Hard Knocks. Even after the redshirt year, it wasn't like a sure thing that you were in the singles lineup, right?
No, I didn't. So yeah, I redshirted, and then my second year I just played doubles. I played doubles with Matt Allaire, who was another big guy from Cincinnati, Ohio. He was 6'6". So we ended up playing 1 doubles. I had a good fall with him, and which was great. I struggled a lot that year though. It was hard just coming in and having to play 1 doubles against the best teams in the Big Ten and in college tennis, and the pressure that there was. It was still tough, but I didn't play any singles really until I was my third year there, my redshirt sophomore year, and I kind of was starting to play a little bit more singles. But yeah, that first year was just primarily doubles, and I think it was good. It kind of like helped me ease my way into the college tennis, and when I say college tennis, ease my way into like the very top floor of college tennis. Not just like on a college team or whatever, but being able to contribute to a big time program.
With your younger brother, I got down here by his junior year, 7-0 in Big Ten, 17-2 in singles, and 22-6 in doubles. But his senior year, he transferred to UNLV, and at UNLV, he was, he won 92% of his matches. He once was ranked 3 in doubles. But he's like your sister and you. He's given pro tennis a go. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So he's actually had a tough go with the pro tennis route. He graduated from Ohio State, and he did a grad transfer to UNLV, and he went out there and he actually had what they call a Liz Frank injury in his foot. And they misdiagnosed it out there. That's a tough one to diagnose. But so he ended up needing to have a surgery on the bottom of his foot, and he was out for 12 months, and then he came back and he hurt his knee, and then he hurt his elbow, and so he's just now getting healthy. And he's actually over in Austria now, training with my old coach from Israel at an academy over there. And I think he's finally in a place where he's comfortable and he has all the resources around him to give it one proper go. So, he hasn't had much luck on the tour. These last 3 or 4 years since he's graduated college, he really hasn't played a legitimate year on tour. So I think, he's anxious to get out there and he obviously knows he can play. He's done it before. He did it at Ohio State. He did it a little bit there at UNLV, even while he was injured. But yeah, he's hungry and he's eager, and he's I would say coming up to the last straw here. So I think he understands what's going on. He's treating it the right way. He's very professional, and he'll walk away from tennis, however it ends, knowing that he was able to give it his all. So.
And what's the coach's name?
Julian Olivari. He was my coach when I was in Israel. French Israeli.
Yeah, I remember Julian when we traveled a bit together back in the day with Connor and you. And
Yep.
But yeah, I thought you told me he's in Austria now.
Well, yeah, he's in Austria. So he's over at the Gunter Bresnik's Academy in Vienna. So he's
right.
working a little bit with Gunter and one of his assistants over there. He's around a lot of professional tennis players. He was just hitting with Barankis 2 days ago, and there's several guys that are in the top, 800 that are there all the time training, popping in and out. So for him to be able to, to get healthy, be in an environment that's very serious and professional, where consistently you have, high-end professional players coming in and out, working with the coaches that are there and doing the same things that you're doing. It kind of gives you a sense of confidence that, all right, hey, I'm finally in the right place. Not that he was ever in the wrong place, but finally in a place where it's 100% conducive to what he's trying to do. So, it's not easy being that far away from home, just from experience, being, thousands of miles away from home, living in the country you've never been in before, around people you've never really met before. So it's a big step, but he's really excited about it. So
probably getting on some red clay as well, right?
Yeah. So right now everything's indoors, obviously there, but in the summer they'll be doing a lot of red clay. They have some indoor red clay though, but once they feel like he's ready, they're going to start, having him train on that. And I think that's an amazing training tool. It teaches you, it really neutralizes the serve, and it teaches you how to actually, win points from, baseline, and when to actually come to the net. And, you have to play the right shot on clay, or else you're going to lose the point really quickly. So it teaches you how to play smart tennis, and learns how, how to construct points and how to move. And I think it's a great teaching tool, especially if you've kind of played on hard court your whole life. So
right, yeah.
Peter, you were in Israel how long, and what was that like?
Yeah, so David Cass was the guy that kind of lined me up with Israel. Right after the NCAA tournament, he pointed me in that direction and to play a few futures, and I went over there and I did well in them. And about 9 months later, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do with tennis, and David's like, well, go over there and see, this guy thinks he can help you. So I was like, well, I'll ask my parents, and they were for it. And I went over there, and it was amazing. Not just Julian and how much effort he put into it, but just the culture and the people over there. Obviously I'm biased now just because I live there, but it's an amazing place. And the culture.
Tel Aviv, right? You were
Tel Aviv, and when I first got there, I was living with a family up near Netanya, which was about 45 or 50 minutes north of Tel Aviv. But those are probably the years that really transformed me the most as a person, where I probably matured more than I ever did in my life over there. Just being being outside the United States for the first time and getting a look from the outside in on what happens in the States, and then also just kind of learning the culture over there. Every Friday night they have Shabbat dinner where the whole family gets together, no matter what, and they all come together every single week. And I was like, wow, that's really cool. And life isn't always easy and peachy over there, so they deal with a lot. And I think we take a lot of things for granted over here that they don't have the ability to do that over there. So it kind of really opened up my eyes, and I learned kind of how the rest of the world works, and tennis aside, obviously tennis was improved, and I was able to do a lot of cool things with tennis, but for just fundamentally as a man, like I grew a lot there, which was, I think, important for me personally.
I think one thing with, I remember years ago, Chad Clark, he was an excellent tennis player and great guy. And I can remember when he turned pro and he played for the University of Texas and he based himself in Austin. And I remember thinking, that's not the thing to do. And I know when my son Connor finished at Ohio State, he spent initially time with Mark Hamlin, right back to doing baskets and balls, a coach I've known for a long time, coach I grew up playing hockey with. And, Connor, he won his first futures after working with Hamlin. And then I know Andy, I guess maybe 6 months, travels with him. And then Andy really helped Connor, and therefore he got the nod to the approval to coach JJ Wolf. And through Andy, I've been around JJ. I mean, I know when Andy met him the first time, we were there to pick up Connor's car. He had a car there for like 6 months after he graduated. But with JJ, I just always think he would have been so much better off. This goes 3-4 years ago. If he had just, Andy and his wife were back in Germany, and I think it would have been so much better to get away from the college town and for JJ Wolf to be based in Germany.
Well, I personally, I'm biased here too, but there were a lot of really great players that came out of the Ohio State program, and there's still a lot of them that are still there. But I think JJ is probably the best ever. I think just the things that he can do on the court, and obviously with the career that he's had at Ohio State and now on the tour. Obviously, Andy, you've helped him out, a lot. So I think you got to see it firsthand too. But he's able to do some things in the court. You're just like, well, boosh. Like, I don't think anyone else in the world can do that. So, but yeah, just I think anytime you can kind of get out of your comfort zone and move and leave, and if JJ going to Germany and doing that, I think it just gives you more perspective, regardless of whether it's good or not. Like, you get a bigger picture of what's actually going on, and you can kind of navigate the world, and you can listen to people from a different perspective, and you can understand them better, and you can, come up with a better answer in return, I think. So.
Yeah. I mean, certainly that's a luxury of tennis is, international travel is education. With backtracking, what are the rules and regulations of redshirting? I mean, can someone be under scholarship and be redshirted? That's certainly a yes, isn't it?
Yeah, you can be on scholarship and redshirt. Yeah, so the only thing that you're not allowed to do as a redshirt is you're just not allowed to compete. So if the coach wants to bring you to a match, they can still do that. You can't play, and you can't go onto the court, and you can't hit or whatever, but you can do that while you're home. But you can practice, and you can do all the things. You just can't compete. You can't get put on the book. You can't. You're not competing and playing for them that year. So you can do everything else. You can have scholarship. You can be with the team. You do everything together. I match that we traveled to was the NCAA tournament, but that first year. But you're still on the team. It's tough though, because in the fall everything's great. Everyone's there practicing, minus the fall events or whatever. But when the spring comes around, it's tough because half the weekend the whole team's gone and you're kind of just there, and you're like, well, like you don't. It can be tough because you don't always feel like you're 100% a part of the team because you're not there with the team. So, that was one of the bigger challenges for sure, redshirting. But yeah, more or less those are the rules of redshirting. So,
Peter, if you could comment on being an All-American, I know it's a great honor. My understanding is that you could be an All-American 8 times. You could be an All-American each semester. You were a 4-time All-American. Then how do you qualify? Is that right? Can you be an All-American each semester?
Yeah. So I think I was a 3-time All-American. I think you gave me one too many, but I think
Wikipedia.
Connor and I.
Wikipedia.
I think Connor and I should have. I think we finished at 11 or 12 in doubles one year. We should have gotten in. I remember Connor was pissed at me for that one. But yeah, you can technically be as many as you can possibly get. So, one example, I think J.P. Smith from Tennessee was an 8-time All-American. I think him and another boy from North Carolina who just did it recently were the only 2 players to ever do that. He just left North Carolina maybe 3 or 4 years ago. I think he was playing some doubles, focusing on doubles. I'm blanking on his name, but yeah, there's actually the possibility to do more. My senior year, I was an All-American in singles already, and I was going to be an All-American in doubles with Kevin Mecca. We were like the number 2 or 3 team going into the NCAA tournament. But I had been playing primarily with a German boy, Ralph Steinbach, for the second half of the year, and we were good enough to make the NCAA tournament on our ranking. So, and I personally thought that Ralph and I were better than Kevin and I. So, if Ty would have put me with Ralph and we would have done well at the NCAA tournament, I could have been a 3-time All-American in one season. So that didn't happen, but I think that would have been rarer than anything else. But yeah, 8-time All-American is still the record, and I think that's still held by J.P. Smith and the boy from North Carolina, who I can't seem to remember his name at the moment. But
Ralph Steinbeck, he's at the Boar's Head Club where you played matches against the University of Virginia. That's like 45 minutes from Wintergreen, where we're based. And I've talked to him once or twice. I invited him up here. I haven't really connected with him at that level, but we have coaches visit, and many times we go watch a Virginia match, or we're just going in to inspire a visiting junior tennis player from here, there, everywhere. And so I'll take him in, and there's a nice snack bar. We'll sit. But I've watched Ralph teach a lot of tennis over the last year and a half. That's just interesting. But but being an All-American, yeah, I thought there was 3 ways. It's your ranking, how far you get in the tournament, and then there was one other.
Oh yeah, sorry, I didn't answer your question totally, but yeah, if you finish in the top 10, okay. So they're changing a little bit. If you finish in the top 10 of singles, if you finish in the top 10 if you finish in the top 10 of doubles, if you finish in the top 20 of singles, and then I think if you go the way it was before, is if you went to the NCAA tournament and you were seeded in doubles or singles, I think you were already an All-American, and if you weren't, then you had to make the quarterfinals of singles or of doubles, and you had to make the round of 16 of singles. So you had to win 2 rounds in the singles, and I think you had to win 2 rounds in the doubles. But I think those are the ways. I think they've changed now. Everything's changing now with college tennis. But when I was playing, those were the requirements to become an All-American. So they were tough. You had to be a top 20, singles player, and you had to be a top 10 doubles player. That's not an easy thing to do.
his name's already come up. Ty Tucker, your coach at Ohio State. I have down Wikipedia again, 59 All-Americans. So when you see that doesn't mean 59 players. That means 59 times. I'd have to research that.
Probably. Yeah. So, there's multiple guys at Ohio State that are multiple time All-Americans. So I would guess that that has to mean that he's had, JJ Wolf was a 2 or 3 time All-American for sure, maybe more, and Chase Buchanan, and the list goes on and on and on. But so I don't think there's 59 players, but he's probably coached 59 All-Americans. So
my son Connor was ranked 2 in the 18s. That doesn't mean he was definitely number 2. I mean, obviously he was very good because some kids were perhaps they've already moved on, or they were just playing ATP level. But so he goes to Florida State, and he called me when he was at the University of Georgia, and then he just saw all the All-American banners. There's obviously, like say at the University of Nebraska, are there many players that have played there that have been All-Americans?
We have a funny question. You asked? We just finished up our alumni event. We have one All-American on the men's program. His name's Stephen Jung. He's actually from California. Him and his brother came here in the late 1980s, and they played here at Nebraska. And Stephen was a great player. He was under recruited and a smaller guy, but he made his way here to Nebraska. And in 1989, he lost in the finals of the NCAA tournament. He was telling us the story when we had our alumni event here just a few months ago. But yeah, right now only one All-American in the program's history. So that's obviously, as a coach, that's one of my goals, is to be able to hang up a few more of those banners, along with some Big Ten championships and some of these bigger trophies that you can win now in college tennis. So.
Yeah, well, let's talk about the University of Nebraska. But before we get there, with ATP, I've coached a lot of ATP players. ATP in my world stands for average tennis player. I mean, just to get one ATP point, but I have down that you were 332 in singles, 378 in doubles. Did you have a consistent doubles player, or did you play with all sorts of players?
So when I first got out there, it was more consistent. I was playing a lot with my college teammate Devin McCarthy, and we were doing pretty well. I remember right after college, I think I won 6 or 7 futures like right away in doubles, and I was like, okay, like I think I got a handle on the double side of things with the futures. And then over time, you start to kind of pick and choose who you play with a little bit more. I remember playing with a boy from Moldova and another guy from Austria, and you kind of just try and find the right partner. But looking back, I probably should have let go of the singles dream and switched over to doubles. And who knows what would have happened then? But there's in my mind, there's a chance I could have still been playing some professional doubles. But that's for another lifetime, I guess. But yeah, I mean, it's tough out there on the doubles tour. It's hard, especially when you're in the futures, trying to bounce around. Most guys aren't specializing in doubles, playing futures, so it's hard to convince someone to travel around with you and play doubles on the futures tour. But you kind of have to figure it out and make it through the futures and doubles if that's the direction you're trying to go.
Tell us about playing the U.S. Open, though. You did get to play in the U.S. Open, right?
Yeah. So they gave me the college wild card, which was cool because we had Kevin Metka and I, who we played. He was my doubles partner at Ohio State my senior year. He was the boy I played with in the NCAA tournament. But we lost in the finals of the NCAA tournament 7-6 in the third to Tennessee against Hunter Reese and Michaelis Labita from Lithuania. So obviously Hunter won the wild card, but you can't give it to a foreigner. So
right.
About halfway through the summer, I got a call from the USTA, and they said, "Look, you're doing great, and the doubles tour, we're paying attention to your results. We want to give you the wild card with Hunter." So I was like, ecstatic and over the moon, and getting to play, at the U.S. Open. was something I never thought I was ever going to get the chance to do. You obviously dream about it as a kid, but being able to, go out there and your name's in the draw, you get ushered out into the court. Everyone flies in to come watch you play. And actually, a funny story, we had a tough draw. We played Mikhail Lodra and why am I blanking on
Mahout, right?
Yeah, Nicholas Mahout.
Yeah.
And I was so nervous. I don't think I'd ever been so nervous for anything in my life. But I remember we lost the first set 6-4, and it was respectable. I was like, okay, like I can live with that. And it's the beginning of the second set, and we played at points. And I think, somehow Hunter hit like a sharp angle volley, and Mahout comes running up to the net, and he slides really close to the net pole, and he hits his shin on the net post, and he's on the ground, on his back, holding his shin, like the trainer gets called, everything. And I turn around to my family and my friends. I was like, I think we're about to get the D, Mahout's on the bench. We're kind of just sitting there. I'm holding my breath. I'm like, come on. And, he ends up having like a little cut on his shin, and they put a Band-Aid on it, and they stand up and they beat us 6-1. But the stunk was they ended up retiring the next round. They didn't even play. So I don't know why.
Shoot.
I don't think it was because of the cut on his shin, but it was a kind of a bummer. But for a second there, I thought we were going to the second round.
To go back to Devin McCarthy, shout out to that family. Recently I spoke to him for a few minutes, I guess more than a few minutes here and there, at my son's wedding. And, we really shouldn't do this. I remember the late Joe Paterno saying this, football coach, is that, you shouldn't compare sports to war, to refer to someone as a warrior. But to me, Devin McCarthy was a Marine. That guy was such a competitor, such a fighter. But is it 3 or 4 brothers that they all played Big Ten tennis in that family? Another Cincinnati family, right?
Yeah, Cincinnati family, great family. Cincinnati's got a great history of tennis. You got a lot of great tennis families down there. The Allaire family, the Wolf family, the Kronagis obviously have a tie to Cincinnati. I mean, the McNallys, Contardi, the list goes on. I'm forgetting name after name. The Bandy family, the Roper family, the Fritz family. There's a ton. So, but the McCarthys were definitely one of them. All 4 of the brothers played college tennis. The first 2, Michael and Ryan, they played at Andrew, the third oldest, played at Northwestern, and Devin played at Ohio State with me. But I just think Devin, being the youngest brother, I'm sure he would tell us stories, but I'm sure he got he was the brunt of all the bullying when in that household, that's for sure. So competitive family, with him being the youngest, I think it morphed him into a pretty tough competitive guy. And I think that's I think he had the best career out of all 3 of them, or out of all 4 of them. So I think that might have been the reason why he kind of had that mentality. But you're right, he was when it came to on the court and competing and practice, like he was as tough as they come. So
in Cincinnati, Andy helped me a couple times. I know he brought JJ Wolf once. The Eastern Hills, Brian Clark, his brother Steve, they have this nice indoor tennis club inherited from their father. And across from their indoor facilities, there's really nice clay court facility, public facility, and that's where the Cincinnati Tennis Hall of Fame is. It's that's an amazing story. That's somebody should we get out of the podcast. Anybody who had 4 kids play Division I tennis, it's very frightening in some ways. Maybe that's the wrong word, discouraging, or like, whoa. Less than 3% of kids play college tennis, and the ones who don't make the lineup as a freshman, approximately 85% of kids don't make the lineup. I guess you could just sum it up by they have stories to tell. But for me, I think maybe it's changed, but I've always thought that kids who grew up in the Midwest, they just had a better sense of sport because they were all fans of the Big Ten. But Ohio State growing up was always your team, no doubt, right?
Yeah, 100%. Like I said earlier, I remember Scooney Penn was my favorite basketball player, and he had this thing at the free throw line where he would bounce it once in front of him, and then he would like loop it. He'd like in his right hand or his left hand, I can't remember which hand. He'd like loop the ball behind his back and bounce it between his legs, like over his back, like and it'd go right between his like legs. Like so if you did it wrong, you'd hit yourself right in the the gentleman area. But so I remember as a kid trying trying to do that, and I was I messed up times, but no, I mean, yeah, I was always a huge Ohio State guy. That was just, as a kid, it was just the big school down the road and watching all the games. National championship game in 2001, and when I was at Ohio State my senior year, I lived with the two captains of the football team, Jeff Hireman and Evan Spencer, who, they ended up winning a national title that year at Ohio State. I was the last one they won. So just being a part of that stuff, it was pretty cool. Just the being from Columbus, being around that type of stuff, growing up as a kid, and then actually being there and being a part of it, and not just having a lot of success with tennis, but also seeing what it's like on the football side of things. Obviously, that's as big as a football program as there is. So, yeah, I mean, I loved Ohio State, and it'll always have a piece of my heart for sure.
Peter, pro tennis being the war of financial attrition. When did you transition from, or when did you make that step to be a coach, and when did you stop playing?
Yeah, it was hard. It was hard. I think tennis is probably the hardest sport to quit. I think it's the hardest sport to really let go, because, in football, like you get a call and they say, "Hey man, you stink." Like we just moved all your stuff out. We're bringing it over to your place. Thanks. Or basketball, like, "Yep, sorry, you got cut," or "You're getting moved down to this league," and they make it pretty clear for you. But in tennis, you're the boss, and you can always sign up for another tournament, and you're like, I'm hitting the ball good today. I think I got it. I think I can still do it. Or, you have one good win. You beat a guy that, maybe doesn't want to be there that week, or he has an off match. He's like 200 or 300 in the world, and you beat him. And you're like, I knew I can do it. I know I can do it. You have that in the back of your head, and that lasts for about a year, where you think you can do it. So I think it's a really hard sport to quit. And I think I was dealing with a lot of that too when I was at the very end of my career. And I think I got lucky a little bit with COVID. When COVID hit, I was pretty banged up. I had some nerve pain in my back shooting down my leg, and I just got another shot in my shoulder. And I had just left Mexico because I was playing the future down in Mexico, and I remember coming back home and my mom was like, "Hey, you're not going anywhere anymore. They're talking about this virus that's going around." So I'm like, "All right." And then all of a sudden COVID hit, and then as that happened, I was like, I'm not waiting for this to kind of blow over. I don't know how long. I'm not going to keep doing all the exercises and finding ways to practice through this stuff. So I think COVID wasn't a blessing for the world, but it was for me in my tennis career. Obviously, I think it helped me kind of move on in life a little bit. So that was kind of the end of it for me.
That's interesting. And so then you go to Kentucky? That's your first stop?
Kentucky was my first stop. Yeah, I was actually the first year I was kind of just at home working for my dad. He was obviously teaching. He was teaching at another club and running his business, and I was teaching a bunch of lessons, running the 3-5 ladies around and the junior clinics, and that was all right. But I got a call from Cedric Kaufman, the head coach there, out of the blue, and he was talking to me, and he's like, "Hey, we're looking for someone to come down and be our volunteer. I think you'd be a great fit for some of the guys that we have on our team right now. Like, I'll give you 2 weeks to think about it and then call me back." So I talked to my parents, and I sat down. I was like, I think this, my parents were like, "Oh my God, yeah, you should do it for sure." Cedric recruited me a little bit out of college, and when he was the assistant there under Dennis Emery, and I really liked Kentucky. I really liked Cedric. He was actually a coach in Cincinnati when he first stopped playing tennis. He was down there at one of the 5 Seasons clubs in northern Kentucky and also in Cincinnati, and he was working with all my competitors, with the Jimmy Ropkers and the Patrick Bandys and the Ryan Bandys and all those guys. So I knew who he was, and I had a lot of respect for him, all just from a young age. But so when he called, it sounded like the perfect fit, an opportunity for me to give college coaching a try. Not a whole lot of, as a volunteer, you're not really locked into the position financially or, with all the obligations of college tennis. You can you have a little bit more freedom. So it was a position where I could get an experience from it. And also, if it didn't work out, it was like, hey, no harm, no foul. Like, this isn't what I want to do. So I thought it was a great intro for me getting into college coaching.
With Cedric Kaufman, I would get our fact checker, Andres Barbosa, on this, but I believe he went 5 sets at the French with Sampras.
He did. He only talked about it one time when I was there, but I think he had 1 match point or maybe 2 match points against them. I don't know if he was on his serve, if he was returning serve, but I know he had a match point, at least one. But I knew that when I went there, and I didn't have the balls to ever bring it up to him. But I remember sitting back, and he was talking about it one time, and I remember I snapped right into focus, and I was listening like a hawk for that one. But
no, I remember.
Yeah,
I remember being at a tournament. To digress, the comedian Michael Costa, he ended up on our doorstep. A lot of the players from the University of Illinois, and a young guy who spent a lot of time with Raven Klassen was playing Cedric Kaufman, and it was the day before. Costa was only playing doubles, and he's supposed to chart for Raven, so he didn't chart the first day. The tournament's in Orlando. I'm driving it back and forth from Tampa, and then it was a big win for Raven. He beat Kaufman. And so the second day, Costa tells the story often, he wasn't charting. And I said, well, this is going to be over. This is it. You're no longer playing with Klassen. And he laughed. But anyway, long story short story long, he never played again with Klassen. But that was a Cedric Kaufman moment. But Andy and I were at the NCAs, and Liam Drax was in the semifinals. And who was on the bench but Peter Kobelt? Tell us about Liam Draxel.
Yeah. Well, I think Cedric, at that point, that was my second year there. So I think Cedric was helping me. He was helping me get a job. He was pushing me to become an assistant. So he's like, you're going to be on the court, and you're going to get, he's like, he wanted me to get all the credit for Liam doing well. And, that was just Cedric being nice. Obviously, him and Matt are the ones that kind of steered the ship there and helped Liam the most. But it was great getting that experience. You're on the court there and you're talking to him in between changeovers, and Liam's an unbelievable kid. I know if you don't know him and you just watch him, and you think he's not. You get that sense where he's a little bit like this, or he's a little bit like that. But he's the total opposite. He's an amazing kid, and he does everything the right way. He works amazing. He doesn't do all the partying and going out and all the college stuff that you think you'd want to do in college. And being able to go through that experience with him, going all the way through the tournament like that, winning some unbelievable matches, just totally emptying the tank, leaving it all out there was just like, wow, it was pretty special for me just to see the effort and all the emotion that he put into it, not just on the court, but, before the match, after the match, seeing how he prepared, how he took care of his body after. You're like, how in the world is Liam going to play another match tomorrow after that,
Andy and I, shortly after that, we ran into Liam at a Battle of Boca. And I said, hey, what's Cobalt do for you? And he said, well, generally, I think whether it was a smoothie or a Slurpee, he said, well, he gets a smoothie and he just makes me chill. He chills me out. There's a lot to be said for helping a player with relaxation skills. I mean, it's really interesting to coach somebody during match play, because usually, I think a lot of times the college coaches, experiencing more anxiety than the player, but there's a lot of nervousness, and you got to try to deal with that.
So I would just sit down with them and be like, look, man, like, these are all these matches are going to be, really tough. Don't worry about what you're ranked and, what's going on. Like, all I'm going to do here is try and keep you comfortable. Whatever you need from me. If I see something with your tennis, maybe something that we can do, give it a try. It may or may not work, but we always tried to solve the puzzle in front of him. Whoever he was playing, what kind of tennis he brought to the court was a little different every day. I remember a few matches he was a little more tense and he wasn't as aggressive as he needed to be. And I'm like, all right, well, how are we gonna get Liam through this one today with whatever tennis he has? And I think he, it was sometimes you coach players and you give them advice and they don't do it at all. But Liam was, in the biggest moments, I'm like, hey, I think try throwing in a serve and volley in a huge moment, and he would do it. And I'm just like, it gives you, it's a sense of respect from Liam. Obviously he respected me enough to listen to me and to do it. But also, like, as a coach, it creates like a heightened sense of responsibility. It makes you watch the match even closer, and everything you say to him, he's listening and he's using that information, and so everything you say to him really counts and really matters, which was for me at the time a great coaching experience. You got to really navigate what's going on playing against the best players and that college tennis has to offer on the biggest stage there. So
yeah, my recollection from that match, he lost, and the kid from Florida went on and won the tournament. But it was a great run to get out to the semis. But his father Brian was there with I believe the gentleman, 99% sure, a biomechanist, and works for a pro baseball franchise. But if you remember, Andy, we shot serve and we sent some film to them. But I've known Brian and Liam a long time. They used to have a timeshare at Saddlebrook in Boca. So, I mean, I would say he was maybe 8. If I had to make a guess, I'd say 9. But he was always smiling, and no matter who he'd play someone who was way below him, way above him. He was just such a great competitor. This is a question for Liam, because my take on college tennis, I mean, I think there's always two sides to a coin, two sides to the story. And I've seen him play a few times since that NCAA tournament, but even during that NCAA tournament, the college tennis is so vocal. And then, pro tennis is not, all that yelling and screaming. Even like when, say, you've lived college tennis for so long now with, the number one doubles teams yells down to, let's go number 3s. And what's your take on that? I thought that might be something that was not the best for him. As far as the spirit of competition and getting, letting it take control of you instead of you taking control of it.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. I think every coach has a different philosophy kind of when it comes to that. There's some programs that's what they're all about. And there's a lot of successful programs that do it like that. And then there's also other programs where it's not about that at all, and they also are extremely successful with the way they do it. So, I think at the end of the day, it's what you have to bring the right energy to the match. So I think maybe for some people that yelling and screaming a little bit, that's their way of finding positive energy and bringing the right energy out onto the court. And then, I think there's some people where that doesn't help them much, and that might actually give them more anxiety. So, maybe they're a little bit more to themselves, a little more focused on the game plan or the strategy or whatever that is. But I think at the end of the day, it's about figuring out what team you have and what players on your team do well with what, and and building, giving them the right formula for them to have success in the court. And I think for Liam, he was always trying to find a moment in the match where he could kind of like let it out, almost like a big point or a big, like a funky shot, or a little bit of a this or a little bit of a that. He always thrived when he looked over and the guy was holding, he had his hands on his knees after a long point, breathing heavy. That was kind of when Liam really got going. And he saw that and he just let him know, like, hey, I'm going to be here all day, man. And I think that was what made him really, really tough, because he could do it every match. And he was a guy that played through a lot of injuries, and he's very, very, consistent with playing. Just, the coach always says, the famous quote is, your best ability is availability. And he was always available,
So you say that one more time?
Your best ability is availability.
It's great.
Yep. So
you shared a lot of pearls just in that one answer. It's a great answer. The energy, it's individual by individual, and the timing of it. At Connor's wedding, one of your teammates, Steve Williams, talk about him. He was a force when it came to helping off the court, correct?
Oh yeah, he had a traveling voice, that's for sure. He was a little guy, but his voice traveled through the facility and other teams' minds for a long time. I think he actually before they actually banned it, but
they did.
He came up with a line. It was just like honest. For a long time in college tennis, you hear, if someone would miss a first serve, the team would say on it. Like get on the second serve.
Yeah.
So he was the one that actually trademarked that phrase. And then I think now you're not allowed to talk at all between the first and the second serve, but I don't think you can say on it anymore either. So, but I think he was for whatever reason, but I think he was the one that kind of got it going. But he wasn't always playing, but he played a huge role in our team in terms of the energy and there's a lot of different ways to have an impact on your team. And he really embraced, when he wasn't playing, he really embraced that teammate position from the sideline.
Now, he would make a difference at away matches.
Oh yeah,
he was just.
Oh yeah, he could hang in there with the best of them with his vocals. There's so many matches where he finished with his voice was gone or he couldn't talk, and as a coach, it's like, man, like the whole team's giving it their all to win these matches. So it's a pretty cool pretty cool feeling now as a coach. You're just like, well, you want all your guys to give it everything you can for every match, and a guy like Stephen Williams did that every time.
Yeah, to go back to Liam Draxler, in America, we say the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. The Greeks say it falls under the tree. But his father, Brian, he'd come and play junior matches, and he was just great competitor, great sportsman. But you have a Canadian connection at Kentucky. Tell us about this Gabriel Diallo, if I'm pronouncing that correctly.
Yeah. So when I first got there, that was the biggest reason. That was the biggest reason why I think Stead wanted me to come. Was he told me, I got this boy here. He's super raw, and you'd be the perfect guy to help him. So when my very first day at Kentucky, I met Gab, and he was like kind of my project, right away. He was the guy that I did a lot of the individuals with him, and Stead and Matt kind of let me take him under his wing there for a little bit. Everyone worked with everybody, but I gravitated towards Gab, and Gab gravitated towards me a little bit there at the very beginning, and we did, a lot of individuals together. He had a great backhand, and he could move really well for a size, but he couldn't make a forehand, and the serve was super inconsistent, and you could see it, but you weren't sure if he was going to be able to put it all together or not right away. But after spending a lot of time with him, I'm like, man, this guy, like, he does everything the right way. He listens to everything that all the coaches say. He does everything to 100% of his ability. He's very polite, very respectful. I'm just like, he was a lot like Liam. You're just like, I don't know how this guy's not going to be successful. he just does everything the right way. So it's kind of on us now as coaches to help him get there. And, you know, he was able to get there. And I think what an underlying, token to his success, I think, was having a guy like Liam there that could kind of hold down the number one spot and take away some of that pressure on Gab to kind of play higher against these great players and let him play at 2 and 3, where he could kind of focus on developing a little bit more, and Liam could kind of be at the top and take on all the bullies of the SEC and kind of handle things at the top. So I think having a guy like Liam there, obviously they were great. They practiced together and they were great practice partners together, but it gave Gab some space and some time to kind of like develop his game a little bit too over the course of the 3 years that he was there. But
that's a really interesting comment to how and Liam's just a couple years older.
I think they're the same age. I don't know. I don't actually know that answer. I think they're either the same age or 1 year apart. I don't know who would be older than who, but I think they came into Kentucky at the same time.
But it is interesting where, you know, someone's a freshman and then right away as a sophomore, how the upperclassmen, the role they have in pulling the newer players. But even also too is that if you're the number one player doesn't have to always be the leader, but that's really interesting in the team dynamics. And how are those two guys doing now?
They're doing pretty well, I'd say. Obviously Gab is off and running now. He's top 100. He's a top 100 in the world in singles. He had a great run at the U.S. Open. He made the round of 16. I was fortunate enough to come and watch him play. I watched them beat Arthur Fies from France, and then he played a 4-set match with Tommy Paul there on the Louis Armstrong court, which is amazing. But you just flash back and you're just like, wow, like 4 or 5 years ago, I remember meeting him for the first time. His hair's going all over the place. He's a scrawny little, 6'7" Canadian kid. And you flash forward to today and you're just like, wow, it's amazing to see how far he's come. But yeah, obviously Gab's doing great. He's, playing big roles on the Davis Cup team up there in Canada. He's becoming, one of their best players. And I know he's got big goals, but I think he could potentially be the number one Canadian here eventually in the next couple of years, in my opinion. But and then Liam's also doing great too. I think he's won 6 doubles challengers this year. I think I don't know. I think it's 6, maybe 7, but he's having a ton of success in the doubles, and I think he's got 1 or 2 singles challenger titles too. He just won a singles future last week in Mexico. So I mean, they're both doing unbelievable. Those 2 guys there, and for me life's all about timing, and to get a phone call from Ced and to have the honor and the privilege to go down there and coach with Matt and Ced, and to be able to work with those 2 guys every day, it was an amazing start to my coaching career for sure.
Well, it's so nice for you when you said a great story with Cedric Kaufman and his assistant having you out on the bench because they're helping you get move from a volunteer to a paid position as an assistant. One comment, just knowing Liam Draxel and his father, Brian, certainly met his mother and sister as well, but that I know it's a matter of finances. It's better now than it was, but I think of Liam having that passion level that he's just not going to go away. So that he's, I could see him trying to play tennis till he's, well into his late 30s.
100%. That's the type of kid he is. He's just relentless with his effort. And he's one of those guys where, if you're a coach and you watch him play, you're just like, great college player. I don't know if he's got the game to be a top 100 or a top 50 player. And I'm just like, look, guys, he's going to figure it out. He's one of those guys that's just you're going to blink and he's going to be top 100. and you're going to be like, wow, he did it. You know, he's going to be one of those guys that he's just got that relentless effort. He believes in himself. He's as tough as they come. He's a great kid. He does all the right things. You know, the universe is going to take care of Liam Draxel, and if he wants to be a top 100 player, I'm not betting against Liam Draxel. That's for sure. After
those are great comments. One is that he's got the legs, and two, he's got the attitude. So he's just got to get more game. I think, you know, my take would be closer to the baseline, go forward more. He's got to do a few things a little bit better on his serve. But yeah, I agree. Tell us about Nebraska for our listeners. Go to YouTube and just put in University of Nebraska Tennis Center, and you get a tour of the place. It's like, wow, unbelievable.
Yeah.
Tell us about so you have to prove yourself. You go as an assistant, then you're interim. Give us a story being a Cornhusker.
Yeah. So leaving Kentucky, I got I took 2 interviews, one at Clemson and one here in Nebraska, and the previous head coach here was Sean Mimey. I obviously knew him a little bit because he was the assistant at Michigan for a long time, and when I was at Ohio State, he was the assistant there. So I knew him. Previously, I had I didn't know him very well, but I had a good relationship with him, and I wanted to take the jump. And funny enough, one of the boys that was an Israeli boy that I brought to Kentucky, he was transferring out of Kentucky, and he took a visit to Nebraska. And on his visit, Sean found out that his assistant was leaving and that he wasn't going to be there. So Yasha, the Israeli boy, called me. He's like, "Hey, I just found out that Nebraska's assistant position's open. Like, no one knows about it yet. It just happened like yesterday." So I called Sean. I said I heard about the position, and you know, I'd love for you to give me a chance for at least for an interview. And we went through the process, and I was fortunate enough that he gave me a chance to be his assistant. So yeah, that's how I got the job. And then after 1 year, the coaching world, it worked its magic, and John ended up going to Michigan. He that job opened up. The previous head coach there took the job at Florida.
Yeah, Adam Steinberg.
After, Brian Shelton retired and went on tour with his son Ben, and then Sean, that's where he met his wife, and his wife has a ton of family there, and he spent so much time there. He knows Michigan well, and it was a great transition for his family. And I kind of saw an opportunity. You know, I got into this, and I was like, I want to be a head coach. So I sat down with the administration, my boss, and I said, I'm just going to put this out there. I don't know if you guys would consider it or not, but I would love to be the interim head coach here for a year. I think I keep the team together. The guys know me. This is what I want to do. This is where I want to be. And that was I went through the interview process and that was that. So they gave me a stab at it, and I was that was one of the coolest moments of my life for sure too. Just holy cow, 6 months ago I was the volunteer assistant at Kentucky. My desk was a chair right next to the refrigerator. I was teaching lessons at 6 a.m, before school, driving kids to school, and teaching lessons until 8 o'clock at night just to try and make enough money to pay for things. And now I'm a head coach of a Power 5 program, and in the premier conference in college tennis. Like, you gotta be kidding me. So it was definitely a pinch me moment, and to come to work in a facility like this every day, like, it's got to be one of the top 10 facilities in the country. And now, on top of that, with the new Tom Osborne Legacy Center, you'll have to type that one in, Steve. That's the student athlete. Just where they study, where they eat, training table, all of it. The combination of the two, I think for sure we have the nicest facilities in the country, which is crazy. So.
Yeah, one of our associates, He said so many positive things. He actually was interviewed to be the women's coach. Dave Secker said a lot of positive things about the facility, but then to look at it on YouTube. No, I actually did look at the second one. You called it the retired football coach, right? Osborne.
Tom Osborne Legacy Center. Yeah, it just finished I think it was $160 million project that took 4 years to complete. It just opened up in August, and it's one of one.
But to be 34 and actually be having spent so much time in Ohio, you haven't seen the sun, so you're a young looking 34 as well. Not many people become a head coach at 34. Was that a question mark, you think? I know I have here that you're, as an interim, I'm asking, you reach the semis of the Big Ten. That must help seal the deal. The team hadn't done that since 1990.
Yeah, I think, it was the best record we had since 1990, and I think that was the first time in program history that we made the semifinals of the Big Ten tournament. So I think, I had a great relationship with my boss, and we communicated all the time, and, I did anything and everything he asked me to do. And I think everything was moving in the right direction before that, but I think, obviously finishing the year that well and played a huge role in it. And then at the very end of the process, everything was moving in the right direction, and then our athletic director just got up and left for Texas A&M out of nowhere. And he really liked me too, so now that kind of threw a wrench into things a little bit, and the new guy comes in, Troy Bannon, and trying to build a relationship with him, and he came over and sat down and talked to me 2 or 3 times, and I was actually his very first hire here at University of Nebraska, so no pressure there for me, but the first hire can't be the worst hire, so I gotta, I'm always proving myself, but for them to believe in me after 1 year at my age with the limited experience that I have, I definitely understand, and I have a good perspective of where I'm at, and I think that's what gets me up every day, come to work and to do my very best, not just for my job, but for the guys here, the guys that stuck around, that didn't get in the transfer portal. It's super easy to transfer now. None of them transferred. None of them left. They all believed in me and in my vision for the program. And, I'll always, be forever thankful for not just Troy and my boss, Keith Zimmer, and at the time, but for the guys for deciding to stick around and to let me kind of run the show here.
No, that's great. Let me ask Andy. He's approaching age 50. Yes or no answer, Fitzel. Growing up, did you husk corn?
I probably did once or twice, actually. Small town, southern Utah. I think there might have been a couple times where I did that.
When I was a kid, I don't think that's the only way you bought corn. And I'm the youngest, so it's like when you're the youngest, no one takes over mowing the lawn. You go home to visit and you're mowing the lawn, and husking corn, your mom would just say, Stevie, yeah, okay, you just do it. But the Cornhuskers, that's the same thing with years ago. Now, I don't think too many places, they even allow you to hang clothes outside. So I'm always telling people, I used to tiptoe through the house and just hope that my mother wouldn't say, Stevie, and it would be in the summertime, because it was expensive to run the dryers. Everybody hung their clothes out. So you'd have to go outside, bring the clothes in. And then you're just hoping that she wouldn't say, and go to the washer and take those wet clothes out and hang them up. So let me ask Peter, you're the middleman here. Yvonne's the youngest. Did you husk corn growing up, Kobelt?
I remember my mom going to the grocery store and getting the corn and having to husk it for sure. So I don't think I ever did, but I watched my mom do it.
Yeah.
So I remember having to throw out all the scrap. But
how about the young guy at the wheel, Yvonne? Did you ever husk corn?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, we had barbecues growing up, and I would help husk the corn before they put it on the grill.
With Andy, why don't you go with a question or two? Got a lot more notes.
Yeah, no, I mean, Pete, it seems like yesterday we were in England with Connor, and I just remember, you guys with the baggy Ohio State clothing, and time flies fast. I mean, congrats on all your success and the position you're in right now. It's pretty awesome, to see you grow up, just listening to you and all the things you've learned. One question I would have, I mean, you've played obviously at a high level and had, All-American status in college and played, on a big time team. If now as a coach, we have a lot of listeners that are competitive juniors and would be college and pro players and the parents of those players. If you were to coach junior Pete and college Pete and pro Pete as yourself now, how would you coach junior Pete and college Pete and pro Pete? What advices would you give yourself looking back,
Yeah, that's a great question. It's probably a longer answer too, but I would say, you just got to focus on getting better every day. Like if you're, there's guys, like I tell the guys in our team, I try and when we have our individual meetings and, everyone's on a different timeline, and it's hard because you come to practice and, the guy at one is beating everybody and there's guys that want to beat him. And I'm like, guys, look, like this guy on his timeline, he's closer to the end of it. He can only get so much better in his tennis career or this and that or whatever it may be. I was like, you got to stop comparing yourself to the guy in front of you or comparing yourself to, Johnny over there who's you're coming to practice with every day. You guys you're running you're playing the same game, but you're running two different races and you got to really focus on your own lane. And just continue doing your best. If you're at 70% of your max tennis, if you're still pretty raw, like why are you comparing yourself to a guy that's at 90 or 95% of his max? Like you just, you gotta understand that tennis is a game where it's just about doing the best you can each day. And sometimes making progress is taking a step backwards, still progress. Sometimes those are the steps you have to take to improve. And I'll give an example. But when I was in college, we haven't talked about it yet, but I think it played a huge role in my tennis career and why I had the success I did was I had a little come to me moment after I think it was my third year, so my redshirt sophomore year. I gave the guy that was helping me out a little bit a call, David Cass, and look, like I'm ready to take this more seriously. Like, what do I need to do? So he told me, oh, okay, he's like, you're going to start working with this strength coach. You got to do this. And I was like, do it. I'll find a way to do it. And that was actually the summer that Connor, Steve's son, transferred to Ohio State. So Connor was there all summer. And I remember that summer, I got into the gym and I was lifting like crazy. And I was just like, man, like Connor was there and he hit the ball so well. And I just was trying to figure out what I needed to do better to like make the jump. And, I asked Connor, I was like, do you think I could go down and start working with your dad? And you think he can help me hit a backhand? I couldn't hit a return of serve and I couldn't hit a backhand. And I couldn't, Ty tried his best, but he just couldn't help me. So I remember, coming down to the tennis house there in Tampa. And I remember those 3 or 4 weeks that we spent together, Steve, those were huge weeks in my tennis career. Straightened, not only did you help my backhand, but you helped my serve and my volleys and my forehand. I think Ty might have thought otherwise at the beginning, but that's just an example. Like it was probably later on in my career where I probably should have done those things earlier in my career, but I had the mentality like, look, I need to get better. I got to take this more seriously. And going down there and, it happened quick, but, 7 or 8 months later, I was number one in college tennis. That was when I made my jump. I finaled All-Americans, and I won our regional tournament. I won the Big Ten singles tournament, and I lost in the finals of national indoors. And in January, when the preseason rankings came out, I was number one, basically out of nowhere. So that's a tribute to me, deciding I wanted to really, really focus and do this and getting into the gym, but also to you, Steve, and all the help that you gave me. I remember the first practice coming down there. I think I played a practice set maybe with Connor.
Yeah.
And you videotaped it, and then you absolutely just sliced me up in the video room, like you like to do from time to time. But those were all things that in my mind, it was always about, I just need to get better. I just need to get better. I just need to get better. And I was willing to do whatever I could to get better. And I think that's what ended up giving me the results at the end of the day. The results kind of just happened, and I think it's a combination of Ty and, how high the level of competition is there every day, and the relentless effort and getting tough and working, your ass off every single day, no matter what. And then also fine tuning your game, your mechanics, your technique, if need be, your footwork, all that stuff. It all kind of clicked and came together at that moment. And that was kind of the first time where I was like, okay, I think I can play tennis.
A few thoughts going back to that. The first time that you were there was over a semester break, and certainly you spent time with your family, and this is my recollection of it. And certainly at Ohio State, you guys are, Ty Tucker, so many positives about Ty and what he's accomplished. So it wasn't like you were there that long. I mean, you came back the second time, but that's my recollection. But the first time, there was all these kids from Tennis Ontario, and they were having their strokes filmed, and so around the court all day. We get back, and these kids are only here for 2 weeks, and we're grinding it around the clock. And I remember you asking to be videotaped, but you really just came to Florida to practice in the warm weather. And Connor, I remember Connor and I talking about it, but you were so persistent, and I said, well, this is not such a simple thing. You got to go back in January and play matches, and Ty obviously being so experienced, but Andy, I know he's disappointed. I had a message, but this was before you became number one in the country. And you're so young, I remember you, Connor, and Mikhail. So I saw you at the three of you chatting at this wedding, but I was funding the cause. Connor was turning 21 December 19th. I can't remember, but I made sure there was a designated driver. I don't know if it was you, Peter, but it was the three of you were going out. So I mean, seems like it was a minute ago, but it was so long ago. So
Ron Mann was the guy in charge of that.
Okay, there you go. So Miriam, yeah, he was an intern, and he's a great coach. That guy's amazing. So I've known him since he was 10 or 11. Now he's, I think 40, 41. In fact, we have a couple players that were just here, and then a couple more players. A young girl that, for our listeners, talking about what you did, she, the first time, this one girl, she's been one in Canada. She came for 6 months and didn't play points. She was only 11. You can do that, but you were not in that timetable where you wanted to be filmed. You had to go back to Ohio State and, get off the airplane and hit the ground running. But my telephone skills are lacking. But so Ty called me up, and he was panicking that I thought he was just going to work on his backhand, and you worked on every stroke, but that it was great. It was justified that several months later you were ranked one in the country. But with Ty, my son transferred there to Ohio State, and I remember Ty calling me up and it was like, okay, 52 days until we play a match or whatever it was. And even on semester breaks in Ohio State tennis, I mean, you wouldn't see the players except for on the semester break. I think they would get from maybe like December 22nd to, usually you're going to definitely be home for part of the holiday, but it's not extended, but he would call up every day. And so the story is what would Kobelt do today? I said, well, he would play this player from Brazil and played one set and Peter won comfortably. I wasn't telling him that Peter was playing with a wooden racket and they're playing a set of mini tennis. So you could work on your volleys. But for our listeners, Ty was a guest on our podcast. You could go back and listen to Ty. And one thing, what we did with that is we focused on Kevin Metka, who, like you and your brother, someone who also redshirted, and that's a tribute to the work ethic. Do you know Aiden Kim? You know his game?
I don't. I know him a little bit, but obviously is he from Michigan originally, or is he from Florida?
I just know that he was at the University of Florida, and he, with all the change, you mentioned Brian Shelton moving on to travel with his son Ben, and then Adam Steinberg is the musical chairs where Steinberg went to Florida. But through that, Aiden Kim, I know he retired, or he didn't retire. He transferred, young guy to Ohio State. But Matt Clore said, work ethic. This is where you want to go. Tell us about what you're going to do at Nebraska when it comes down to how are you going to have that culture be developed?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think you're always the product of the people that you've worked with. So I don't think any coach is a genius. I think we all just kind of take the best things from everyone we're surrounded by at the time, and we try and implement them into our coaching aspect. So you'll at Nebraska, you'll see a lot of things that we did at Ohio State. You'll see, I learned a ton, obviously, from you and from Andy over the course of my career. So, teaching the fundamentals and stuff, some of the guys, are able and receptive to do some of that stuff. Some of the guys you recruit aren't as able and receptive to that sort of thing. But, and then obviously I learned a ton on tour with from my coach over there, Julian, and the fitness coaches I worked with, and some of the other coaches I rubbed shoulders with over there. So I think it's like a melting pot of it all, So I think in college tennis, the basic stuff wins you a lot. I think you gotta stop playing losing tennis first, and then you can start playing, good tennis and winning tennis, and then you can start playing championship level tennis. So, but I think the biggest mistake a lot of coaches make is they skip out on that first stage of, you got to stop beating yourself and playing losing tennis, and that's just fundamentals and basics, and learning how to, the basis of tennis. You got to put the ball in the court. You got to have good margins. You got to hit the big targets. You got to, be able to swing under pressure. You got to be fit and strong and tough. And in Nebraska, you play indoor tennis, and when you play outdoors, there can be some wind sometimes. There can be some cooler temperatures. It's not always easy to play here. So, being able to go out there and being able to take care of all the things on your side of the court, and knowing that all those things are where they need to be, I think is, the majority of college tennis. And then from there, you can kind of sprinkle in the stuff that is going to help you, at the later levels of your career in college or the beginning of your pro tour. But I think if you're a master of the basics, you can go as far as you want in tennis. I think it's really hard to get anywhere without having really good sound fundamentals, and not just with your technique and with your strategy, but also with your work ethic and and your attitude when you come to practice every day. I think all of those things, doing them the right way every day, is the foundation to being a great tennis player and having a great program. So for me, I would say, we're going to work hard. We're going to be tough. We're going to hold guys accountable. There's no doubt about any of that. But at the same time, these guys got to get better. Like, they got to improve with their tennis. And sometimes that's a technical thing. Sometimes it's a mindset thing, a tactical thing where, what are you trying to do? Trying to get them to understand, the tennis that they need to play. And, what tennis is going to work under pressure. All those things really matter. But as a coach, I think I have a pretty good grip on it. I think you're always evolving and changing things here and there, tinkering with some things, and how, what days to push hard, what days you got to kind of come down and let them, prepare for a match, when you go heavy in the gym, when you're more light in the gym, when it's time to do more on the court fitness, when you play more sets. There's a what kind of team do you have? Is it an old team? Is it a young team? There's a lot of different factors that go into it that you're constantly thinking about. I'm constantly bugging my two assistants about, what do we got to do? What do we got to do? What do we got to do? But long story short, be a master at the basics. And I think that's why I resonated so well with you and Andy. And, that's your whole program there,
Yeah, one thing, Peter, with weather, I've always heard of the wind in Nebraska. I'm drawing a blank on the name, but a famous tennis player, did really well in the juniors, and then had a successful career in the pros. How's it go? I love the wind because my opponent hates it.
Yeah.
That 2-ounce ball is going to fly out there.
Sure. No, that's the thing that we have to learn how to use to our advantage. We have a lot of good teams coming to town this year, and not all of them are are going to be used to that on any given day. So we got to figure out how to take what we have and turn it into strength, and so when people come here, it's a true home court advantage, and with a good crowd and a team that's fully prepared. For whatever, I think we're going to be a tough team to beat. So at the end of the day, that's I think that's how you overachieve, is every time you play, you're just a really tough team to beat. And you can, in college tennis, the margins are so small, even from the very top of the rankings. Anything can happen. I think there's a lot more parity now in college tennis with the way things are changing with the transfer portal and NIL and revenue sharing. I think, it's changing the game, and it'll be interesting to see where everything goes. But it always comes back. Winning will always be hiding under the same rock it's always been under, and it always comes down to your work ethic, your habits, and your willingness to improve every day. So
no, it's so well put. I think with one thing that people said about Ty Tucker is that, he put a fence around the state of Ohio, and get someone like your brother Alex or Kevin Metka. You need to do the same thing as put a fence around Nebraska. Jackson Withrow, he, to my knowledge, he stayed and he was sent to me when he signed with Texas A&M. He was sent to come and do a week of video work. I know Jack Sock was from Nebraska, even Andy Roddick, but the Roddick family, they moved to Texas and then to Florida. And Jack Sock was coached by Mike Wolf, who played at Kansas, and he was based in Kansas City. But yeah, you need to find the Jackson Withrows, put a fence around Nebraska. So with that, right now you have one American on your roster. I read where, the AD said they liked your plan for recruiting. I know a lot of people say, well, initially we have to bring in foreign players so we can start to win and then bring in American players. What's your thought on the balance between where the players are from, foreign or American?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think for each program, it's slightly different. I think obviously we're always going to recruit, the best Americans and, obviously put up a fence around Nebraska. I think, there is some young talent here in Nebraska. I think it's coming up the pipeline still, but, I think it has a lot to do with how you coach and how you run your program too. I think the American kids, they understand college sports a little bit more. They watch the other sports. They understand, I think, in my opinion, in tennis, in the college world, you have a lot of tennis coaches, or you have a lot of managers, or you have a lot of former great players. But I don't know, like, how many actual coaches there are that are able to get the very best out of their players every day, that come to practice, that drive their players to be their very best every day. I don't know how much of that's going on, but that's one of my goals. Is every day we come to practice, my goal is to get every ounce of energy, every ounce of effort out of all of our guys every single time we go out there. But I'm losing my train of thought a little bit. What was the question again, Steve?
Well, the American, we're always saying try to get more Americans playing American college tennis. I think it's great that we have so many people come over here. I mean, where would American tennis be without all the internationals that come over? But right now,
for sure. I think for the time being, it's hard. It's not easy for a school like us where we're ranked, and to be able to go out and recruit the best Americans. I think it's going to take some time to do that. I think there's some, I think it's, when you grow up in Florida or you grow up in California, you grow up and you go to a match at UCLA or USC or Florida or Florida State, and you're like, wow, I want to play college tennis there. But I think one of my biggest goals here at Nebraska is I'm focusing a ton of time and energy into trying to grow the tennis community here. I'm trying to connect with the tennis community here. We're doing a ton of work outside of the college space to try and just grow tennis here in Nebraska, because I think it's so important. You gotta have guys from this area that are on your team. You have to have kids growing up and saying, hey, I want to be a Nebraska Cornhusker one day. And the more of those you have, the better and the more sustainable of a program I think you can have, because I think it's hard going overseas and trying to recruit with, and build relationships with these people, thousands of miles away if there's local talent that, they already want to be at Nebraska. I think that helps a ton. But, and how you coach, and, I think that matters. Sometimes it's hard to get a kid from, France or from wherever, from Italy or wherever it may be, to come in and buy into a team culture that is too far that way or not enough this way. Or so understanding, what type of program you want to run, and understanding, how you have to adapt to each player, and if it's worth it for that player or not. I think all those things matter, but we want to have American kids here playing here at Nebraska. That there's no doubt about it. But I think it's a process, and I think we've got to earn some respect from these junior players too. They got to know hey, Nebraska's for real. That's more than just a nice facility in a really great college town with great fans. I don't think that's enough anymore. I think they got to know this is a legit place to come and get better at tennis. And, we got to have guys that go out into the tour and have, great careers, and they need to believe that this is a place to come get better at tennis.
Population, obviously, place like Ohio, you've got Columbus, you got Cincinnati. Population is much larger. I'll come back to that point, but why don't you give us a commercial for Lincoln? What's Lincoln like?
Yeah, Lincoln's great. 300,000 plus people, college town, all about Nebraska, the whole state. It's blue collar people religious based, just straight up the middle, meat and potatoes, fastball, American people. Just about as normal of a place as you can find. Just really good people, passionate about, their families and, their friends, and the Nebraska Cornhuskers. We've sold out, the football team has sold out, I think 402 or 403 straight football games in a row.
Wow.
The longest record in college football. Today, I think it goes back in the 1960s. That's, through thick and through thin, that they all come and they support. We just had a volleyball day last year where it was the largest women's sporting event in all of women's sport ever. 92,000 fans sold out the football stadium for a volleyball game.
Wow.
So, these things don't just happen. Everyone's got passionate fans and everyone's got, cool facilities, but no one has fans like we do here at Nebraska. They keep proving it year after year. And I think that's one of the really cool things that I've learned here is that, if we can get this tennis program up and running, and we can get our ranking up and we can start, winning some of these big matches, and, the fans are going to come out and they're going to support and they're going to get behind us, and they're going to, they're going to want to be a part of our program, just like they're a part of so many other programs now. So, but yeah, it's a great town. It's a great town. The campus is beautiful. When you walk around town and you have your Husker gear on, everyone's looking at you. Everyone knows who you are. It's a really cool place, honestly. So
yeah, knowing I was going to talk to you, I talked to someone who is from Nebraska, went to Nebraska, said define Nebraska, and in one word, he said wholesome.
That's a great way to put it. It's just it's very safe. There's nothing crazy going on. It's just a great place. It's not the sexiest place in the world, but it's as solid of a place as you can be.
Coming back to the developmental side, Richard Hernandez, who you've known a long time, he's one of our oldie goldie old cronies. He sent some questions in, but with development, someone who has a similar path to you, Jeremy Wertzman. I met Jeremy when we have the film, he was 11 years old. A little bit different when you meet someone when they're 11. And he, like yourself, was number one in the NCAAs. He, like yourself, has been in charge of a men's team. He's obviously you know him well. He's at Indiana. And to Ty's credit, he has so much passion. I mean, I think many people answer that, how you become good at something, passion. So Jeremy with his wife Gretchen, they were going to spend summers with me, and then that came around. And Ty said, "No, you're not leaving Columbus." And again, that's one of the reasons that Ty is so successful. But I think that's what you need to do at Nebraska, is that for a Nebraska kid, it sounds like you already mentioned the key word is community. I think that a program like yours, let me ask you, this tour of your facility says it's for the players only. It's a beautiful indoor-outdoor facility. That's amazing. So I'm going to guess that there's all sorts of courts on campus as well, right?
There's not. That's one of the issues one of the big issues in town that people keep talking to me about is our facility is 100% private, which is great for our guys. It's 7:00 here in Lincoln, and no one, if the guys want to come back and practice right now, they can. They don't have to call and find practice courts or whatever. I think us and Ohio State are the only two programs in the Big Ten that are like that, which is a luxury for our players. But other than that, there's only 10 other indoor courts in all of Lincoln for 300,000 plus people. So we're trying to figure out ways to let the community come in and use our courts. without turning it into a zoo. But I think one of my biggest goals is just growing tennis here in the state of Nebraska. And I think getting people into our facility and getting comfortable, coming in the building, leaving the building, having them around, seeing all the pit banners and posters, maybe watching our guys practice from time to time. I think that kind of just sparks the fire a little bit, it gets the fire breathing a little bit more for tennis here in Lincoln and in Nebraska.
Pete, are you running a summer camp or?
Yeah, we have. We had two summer camps this past summer that were ran by Wilson tennis camp. My good old friend David Schilling, the CEO over there, was my volunteer coach at Ohio State. So he's helped us put on our first two camps this past summer, and we're going to do them again this summer as well. But I think that's a great way for juniors in this area, in this Missouri Valley area, to kind of come out and see the facilities and kind of work with us a little bit too.
Yeah.
With I think of Brian Boland when he was at Virginia, and he was setting records for getting fans. So I think obviously you want to be able to get fans. It's like the Don Staley at the basketball coach at the University of South Carolina. How to get fans, and there's so much to be said about community. I'm glad you said camp, Andy. You're ahead of me on that. But I want to ask one thing on club tennis. So the university, a big university like that, they don't have courts on campus. They can't believe that, intramural courts.
But they do have. They have 3. I think they have 7 or 8, but it's only outdoors.
Right.
And they're not permitted to come and use our indoor courts. So,
but still, I mean, that's a good start. That you do have outdoor courts. There is
outdoor courts.
Yeah, that's good. But I think the C's, I mean, they have a culture. And the other 4 C's, obviously, coaching is one of them, but camp, club, and community. Actually, a university like that, the students are the resource. And, I think it's great to have, fans come in, the rah-rah. You need that. You need, like you said, with a great answer, you need energy. But I really think that, you certainly have to be careful, and you got to have the team be priority number 1. But you need to start to train parents on how to practice at home and how to, get to the elementary schools. And but I really would find people on campus, because players, they do have to be selfish because they have to work on their game. But someone who's not going to pursue college tennis or beyond, I would turn to trying to get connected with the club program, and then to have an outreach. I remember telling Claire Pollard this years and years ago. She's been very successful at Northwestern. And can you imagine if college tennis teams, if you had to have 2 players from Nebraska play on your team, and then you'd have to get to know how long have they lived in Nebraska, because people would, they could break the rule, break the spirit of the rule. But just imagine how good American tennis would be. Just like both of you guys have spent time in Germany with where they have to have, you can have 2 Auslanders. You got to have German players, but you have to have 2 foreign players. But yeah, I think one of our students, not at a Power 5 school like yours, but live and let live. But Nick White, he was a guest on our podcast, and he's a small school, a Division III school, Skidmore, new indoor, outdoor. And he just did it for 2 years. And, I would say, no, I mean, 5, for yourself, I mean, 5 years is just a good start. To bear fruit, you'd have to do things, right now that you don't plan on having any really result until 10 years later. That's the kind of work that we're in. It's the work, training a tennis player in the junior sector. You start them, say they're 7, 8 years old. It's such a different animal than what you have to do with somebody 17 or 18. But, that's just a little bit of advice. I just think you've already said it, community, but a camp in the club. I think with you know, what's Dave's name? You just mentioned he's back. He's coaching his alma mater, runs the Wilson camps.
Schilling.
Dave Schilling, yeah. So obviously a bright guy.
Jensen. Yep.
Yeah, bright guy to do that for so long. He worked as a volunteer for years and years. And, Wilson, Nike. The one thing about that, I could be wrong with Wilson, but with Nike, it's just like it's no longer Club Corp. It's called Invited. At one time they controlled more courts than anybody in the United States. That's Dave Anderson's place. Used to be Club Corp. So if they have 200 facilities, each one is the culture is based on the director. But I think camps. I know because I spent some time at NC State. Unless the rules have changed, you can have a camp 365 days a year, but you just have to really follow the ITA or NCA or both NCA rules.
Decent amount of paperwork too. But
yeah, there is. The insurance. I spent time in Tyler, Texas for a decade, and it was a small city, not much smaller. I think I saw where you're 105 on the list of the size of population with Lincoln. But yeah, you have to reach the homes, and it's with and having kids play other sports. But just think about American tennis. The little kid tennis, it's really more of an activity. It's more glorified babysitting. But no, you have a lot of responsibility. But you obviously, as a head coach, can become a pillar in the community. But you have to have an army. And your army would be for me, it would be going through the club program and helping them as much as possible. I had a program where you get a 2-year degree as a tennis teacher. So we had a 9-month orientation for people to work in the camp. So we had a pretty good camp. But most places don't even have an orientation. But no, I think the people who work as your staff members, so many things. Dave Schneider, who passed away not too long ago, coach at the University of Texas. It was an honor for us when we were at Little Tyler Junior College, within the same state, Texas, is that he had a course for, I would recommend you do that as well. A lot of C's. So you got culture, coaching, camp, community club, and then a course that you should have an elective on campus where you get a college credit from it. And, obviously in Lincoln, Nebraska, I mean, you could be the guy who's getting people to practice in their basement and practice in their driveway. And our program is not our program. It's really a system of systems. If people do an in-depth, and we have people listen to every podcast, looked at every video, we recommend read a book. They read the book. And now you really... I think really with, like, say, the USTA, the alphabet soup, the PTR, the USPTA, is you need to wave the flag of the University of Nebraska. And with that, obviously you can't, recruit a kid from Nebraska who can't play at this point. But I think that would be something that would be really special with the opportunity you have. I mean, you think about being 34 years old. I mean, you could retire at a place like the University of Nebraska.
Oh, yeah.
And that would be a great career. And just think of what you could do. I'm 70, so 30 years from now, Peter Kobelt, I'm going to check in on you, see how you're doing.
If I'm there, that'll be a great career, that's for sure.
No, let's just do this for a second. We have these marathon podcasts. We'll just do this for a minute. If listeners want to plug in YouTube and go Peter Kobelt, the first thing that came up was, we'll do this fast, Alex Damajan versus Peter Kobelt, 2013 indoor tennis. Yvonne, why don't you just go through this very quickly? I said, Yvonne, chart these points. Everybody take a deep breath. Our listeners, they can listen to this 10 minutes at a time. But
So, 10 points were charted. between Alex and yourself, Peter. I'll just go with the stats. When we teach charting, at the end we say, okay, do the summary sheets, and juniors don't do the summary sheets. But with the summary sheets, you have a frequency chart, percentage chart, and they go together. So again, total points is 10. Differential, and for our listeners hearing first time, differential, it's your winners with your opponent's forced errors added together, and then subtracted from your unforced errors, and that gives you your plus minus, your differential. So Alex's in these 10 points that were charted was a 0 differential. He actually had 1 winner and then 1 unforced error, whereas yours was -2. With the percentages, you had 1 ace. Your first serve percentage was 40%. You won 75% of them. 100% second serves were made, but only 16% were won. From the returner, Alex, he had half his returns were in play. Half his returns were actually weak. They were just floating up there, and then a few points he had a weak return and just floated to your backhand, and your first instinct was to hit a forehand, and you tried running around it, realized you were late for it, and then just kind of flubbed the backhand. I think it was one slice, and then one was you tried to go for a topspin and didn't pan out. With net points, Alex didn't come in once. You came in a total of twice and won once. Let's see, percentage of points won. 10 points. Alex won 6 of them, so 60%. It was 2 deuces, I believe, 2 deuces. Tactically watching those couple of points, a lot of just who can hit the ball bigger, a lot of running around. It's common. We have, I think it's in Steve's notes, but, we have a player that we are helping out. Spencer Johnson's been here and been on the podcast quite a bit, and we give him a hard time because he doesn't honor the system. He doesn't play the system. He has his own mental demons, like we all do, in terms of how he plays, why he plays, and he's been brought up very fortunately in the system, around information in the system, we review his matches. We're close with his father, or just Steve is a lot closer with his father. I have known him for a little bit, Joey Johnson, and we get to review his match play, and he's a big boy now. We can give it the criticism like he deserves to hear, and we say pretty harshly, like he's just disgracing the program because of the stuff that he does. Especially in the first match. I mean, he loosened up towards the end, and he was sick in the first. So there's different ways to look at it. But sometimes strong words like that really make an impact, because it's like, oh wow, like I became an All-American in this tournament, and these guys in the middle of Virginia are telling me, I'm not playing the wrong way and I'm a disgrace. But it's all for the benefit of Spencer, and he's a great kid. But that's what it reminded me of. I'm watching tactical decisions based off of just the want to win and how tight it is, and it's really not based off of skills and how good you can get and get close to the net and finish off. It's not much skills in play, at least from what I recall and see and remember.
But now also too, that's the first choice on YouTube. The second choice is you can watch the entire match, but very quickly. We say this all the time. Winning's not confusing. How's it go? Help me out with that.
It's totally confusing.
Yeah, winning's not. Say it correctly. Go ahead.
Winning isn't confusing. It's totally confusing.
Winning's not confusing. It's totally confusing. Like, say for example, Blas Roll and Chase Buchanan, only team to win all 3 national titles, but I can remember being there when they lost against UCLA. And then I remember Rolla, who I saw recently, like 2 weeks ago, playing a challenger 3 weeks ago here in Virginia. And I remember him playing 3 doubles and playing 1 up, 1 back. And, that's where we come from, a different place than college tennis. Is college tennis, like, we've got to win, and you're working in our side of it. It's just to get people to play college tennis. Now, Alex Damajan, I met him when he was 8 or 9 years old. I was running the on-court side of a Vic Braden tennis college. And I knew, just like you and your dad, I met his grandfather and his father. Like, this guy is big. So shout out to my son, Mikhail, who played at a high level when he was 10, 12 years old. I remember him beating Damajan 0-0. A lot of people, Mikhail beat 0-0. He just didn't stay the course. So Alex Damajan, you're playing him on this tape. I was sitting next to Dick Gould, and a longtime Stanford coach, retired at that time. He's won 17 titles. And I said, Dick, there's going to be a kid who comes out. And this kid won everything in the juniors. He became an All-American. He won the All-American tournament in Tulsa freshman year in the fall. And, this comes back to your game. To looking at it, obviously, we certainly helped you with techniques, but with tactics I told Dick, I said, this big guy's going to come out. He's as tall as a tree, and he's going to serve and stay back. Now, I forgot that I said that. And they came out, they warmed up, and they started playing. And the legendary Dick Gould gives me a thump. He goes, I can't believe it. Now, but going back, watching Alex Damajan when he was 12, I go into Virginia, watch some matches. Trying to think of Jameer Jenkins. He was sent to me 2 different times, and great guy. He never really learned to volley. I can remember being on the road with Krychek, and this guy just, he had like a Donald Young beat, but he just couldn't volley very well. And he won he lost the NCAA to Rolla. So that's where we're coming from. But I would say watching your tennis is you certainly were a victim, serve +1. That, you were just serving and looking to hit a forehand. And Yvonne just mentioned Spencer Johnson. You'll see him because now the UCLA is part of the Big Ten.
Yep.
That's what I mean by, club tennis is if you had a course and you were training people through club tennis, because I really think, like Ty Tucker, what a coaching tree, but, you're going to have to do something different to, because I asked Ty, I said, because he's got this amazing coaching tree, and it was just a quick text, and I said, Ty, don't your guys, they want to beat you? And he goes, yeah, but I want to beat them worse. And that's what that's just why he's been so successful. But and just looking at that, that's what's so tough about all levels of tennis. Is a freshman gets on campus to the University of Nebraska. What I would also recommend is if you could do what they did years ago, where you're a freshman, you don't even play. I mean, that was a rule. Stan Smith, Arthur Ashe, you couldn't play as a freshman. When I went, I was one of the first age groups that could play. My 3 older brothers, when they were freshmen, they couldn't play. But, so, that's so difficult because, people think that this is the macho male ego. A kid is, they're staying in a dorm. They're the second best player in the room. There's only 2 people in their dorm room. And the next year they think they're going to be number 1 in the world. But what do you think of those comments as far as like Blah's role at Chase Buchanan? I mean, I have to make a comment about Chase as well. It comes back to that one other story, but what do you think of that comment? Winning is, help me one more time.
Isn't confusing, is totally confusing.
What do you think, Peter?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the not the dilemma of college tennis, but we're at the end of the day, as coaches, that's kind of how you're judged, and that's how more or less you keep your job. Is you win more than you lose, and you try and win more than everybody else. So you have to try and find the right balance of doing that, along with developing the guys in your team. I think winning is also a skill that you have to learn as well. I think that's something that's hard to coach, but you have to find ways to win. You have to find ways to figure out what's going on inside the match. Yvonne, thanks for breaking down a tough loss there. I figured something like that was going to happen on this call. Can't ever be
with
all of you three getting without getting roasted, but yeah, I mean, how do you in that situation? I'm obviously super nervous, and I'm guessing Alex is also super nervous. And how do I, looking back, it's how well it comes back to what you do in practice. If you're practicing the right way, if you're practicing, like what you were saying, is the system the right way in practice, then you're probably going to be able to do it better in those moments in the match. So, while the technique was probably there and in a much better spot, I think I had worked with you guys at this point. We obviously, that's not what we were practicing every day with Ty, and that's all right. That's just the way it was. So you kind of revert back when there's big time pressure. You always revert back to what you're most comfortable doing. I think that's just kind of the nature of human beings in general. But so, that's why when you practice, it's got to be intentional, and you have to, really lean into what you do every day. You can't just flick the light switch on during the match and say, okay, I'm a serve volleyer, but I don't ever practice it. Now let's do it.
Yeah.
With you know what I mean?
With these podcasts, so now we're going to roast you for saying that you got roasted. But on the podcast, Nothing Major, like a Sam Querrey and a John Isner, they're just openly talking about, they couldn't volley. Joel Trucker, great tennis mind, Andy knows him really well. He was a guest on our podcast, said if you're going to start to go to the net when you're 15, it's going to be like learning a third language. He roasted me because I call going to the net a risk. And he said, don't ever say that again. And I try to catch myself, is that going to the net is an investment. And it's all about skill. So, no, your forehand was a weapon. It's forehand. But Alex Damajan, I just knew, having met him at this Braden camp when he was a tiny tyke. I don't think like you and him, you guys were never tiny, but watching him in juniors and he won. I think that's a shortcoming of college tennis is there's just not enough development. So we get a rep where people just think that, first of all, it's all about character. You can't change technique if you don't have the right character, but technique and tactics are one and the same. I think one other thing we could do while you have me on the phone is that serve was huge, Kobelt, but Andy, tell him if he goes back and looks at the video, he needed to toss more to the right. What's your comment on that, Andy?
I would say, yeah, from what I remember.
No, but just give us the math on it. That tosses over your head. You have to change the angle of the racket path, and it slows down.
Yeah, you just said it. I told someone just the other day, just get out and shadow swing, and just, as your shoulders naturally unwind, and you listen to where that swish is, it's going to be to the right of your head and out in front. So that's where you want to put the ball. That makes sense.
No, yeah, I think that's one of the common things that you see a lot in coaching. Now that I've been in coaching for a while, is you see the toss, especially on the first serve, it always ends up on the left side of their body, and you tell them to toss it out to the right a little bit more, and it feels like they're tossing it, down the road. It's so far to the right for them, but it's really just right above their shoulder. But yeah, that was one of the things that, when I came down there and worked with you guys on the serve, it just became, my serve was always big, but it was never consistent like it got to be. So I think that's for me, tennis is simple. You just have to have things that are easy to repeat over and over and over again that aren't going to break down under pressure. And you got to know it and believe it. And I think that's a huge part of tennis. And I think that gets overlooked. And it's So yeah, tossing the ball to the right. That's something that I learned down there with you guys, and over my career, I could start to feel it go more and more to my left. But I always felt like I did a better job than most of keeping it more out to the right than the majority of my peers. Not that that's what I was comparing myself to, but
yeah, no, my recollection, and certainly that's one thing is we have the tape. Is that I said I remember saying, "What's Ty working on your serve?" And I said, "Just keep doing that." Just how you explained it, and but there's so many things in this podcast. Like Steve Contardi, I've just been in the audience. I've just been a student where he was lecturing years ago at a USPTA conference. Met him, don't really know him, but just know that he's done great things in tennis. Same thing with your dad, but both of them have a Bollettieri background, and I have such great respect for Bollettieri. But, Nick was not one to, do the tennis math and do the technique. It's like a Devin McCarthy. Again, I think we should get his parents on this podcast. I mean, 4 kids going down the road and getting where they did. What an effort. But we look at someone like Devin McCarthy, you go, can you imagine if that guy had really good ball striking skills? Because he won without him. And, that's, we've coached so many kids that have pretty strokes and, they can't compete at all. But coach now, Raleigh Grossbaum, I'd have to ask him if he's still listening to these podcasts, but he did the hard yards, did an internship with us. Maybe a year. I mean, where we had, some people do a decade, but I recommended that, Ty bring him in. Ty was looking for a third coach, and Ty's sly like a fox, smart like a fox. He said, if it was you or Andy, meaning me, that I would go for it, because I wrote him a letter and said, hey, and with he said not too long ago, this young guy, Henry Squire, I just kept telling his father, send him to Ohio State, send him to Ohio State, send him to Ohio State. And he's somebody that I met when he was 6, and Mark Hamlin, through his dad, really taught him how to hit the ball. But Ty was right, because I said, you should hire this kid, Raleigh Grossbaum. And when kids take the year off, like you and your brother and Alex Metka did, or Kevin Metka, one time, the only time that I did this with Ty is he was injured. He couldn't practice his feet. And I told Ty, send him down here pro bono and would teach him how to hit the ball better. But I think sometimes, you get that horse in the corral and the way that program goes, that didn't happen. But that's one thing coming back, that's all basically, I'm addressing this through Richard Hernandez's his point on development. But yeah, I think that's one thing that Ty does. He does so well communicating with those young players, and there's an art to that for sure, talking to 17, 18, 19-year-olds. This is one thing I want to add is when Ty got so emotional about, you were changing everything. David Cass, he has the same, because him and Ty, they're both Columbus kids, both born in 1970. And that's their impression, is that I'm going to change everything. But I worked with the only Ohio State players I worked with, I mean, other than like yourself, Connor, Jeremy Wertzman, but Chris Diaz was a redshirt, and I was helping him. And right away, I put him right back in the drills. And the same thing, I did some work with Chase Buchanan on the serve. But here's a question for you. Who was the girl, Italian girl, grew up at the Ohio State Tennis Center?
Francesca Di Lorenzo.
Say that again?
Francesca Di Lorenzo.
Yeah, so that was another time that I was there, and I ended up giving her a 1-hour private. And to me, she's like a Devin McCarthy, is that that girl would run through walls. How's she doing now? Is she still playing?
She's the assistant coach at UCF now, down with Brian Kanyeko.
Yeah. Yeah. I get all these things. How do you say Novak? Novak?
Bolak, Novak, yep.
Bolash. So what a great guy. So No wonder he was invited to Connor's wedding. So he's in Manhattan, and there's all these drinks being offered, but there was no. Novak goes, hey, to the bartender, can I start drinking Manhattans? I'm in Manhattan. So he's drinking those two at a time. But no, I remember having the UCF coach. How do you pronounce Brian's last name? Kenyeko. With Andy, we had a nice, our library was organized, and Novak was saying, hey, Brian would love to get in this library. But I think the one thing is it's time. So if you're the head coach at UCF or you're the head coach in Nebraska, I would come back to the club team. And, it's really more of a challenge to coach a college kid who's 18 years old than it is to coach an 8-year-old. But let's turn it over to Andy. What do you got, Andy? We'll wrap this thing up.
No, I think it's great. The situation you're in, Pete, where, you can develop, the background that you've had and the experiences you've had, that you can, organize that community and develop and build that team. It's kind of fun, obviously it'd be nice to take over a number one team, but I think it would be more fun to get in and develop the same way Craig Tiley did. And not to say that Nebraska is obscurity, but to take a team that's maybe not considered one of the best and to take them to the top would be great. So great opportunity.
No, I think it's Andy. I think it's fantastic you mentioned Craig Tiley, because he was with us for 7 years, and the way he won at the Big Ten was so different than the way Ty has won at the Big Ten. But it's amazing, their records. And Tiley, he'll tell you that he never lost to Ty Tucker. That's not totally true. He himself was never there, but he was coaching the South African Davis Cup team, some kids that lived with us in Tyler, Texas. How does a guy at the University of Illinois who didn't play world-class tennis, how does he become the coach of the Davis Cup of South Africa? So we had these kids that we worked with in Tyler, Texas, and all of a sudden, like a John Lofty Diaga is good enough to be on the Davis Cup team. But that's what I would recommend. I tell people all the time that if you were to take Ty Tucker and what he does with work ethic, and it's amazing. I remember Andy watching Ty Tucker for the first time, and I said, Fitzel, this is going to be awesome. And just the way you guys worked is unbelievable. But Tiley, was more of a think tank. It was more like what Yvonne was just doing with charts and with technique and film. And I'm glad you mentioned Tiley, because you have amazing opportunity to be 34 years old. Congratulations. That's amazing that you have that opportunity.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, I'm really fortunate to be where I am at this stage of my life. Obviously, it's, to be a head coach at any university is an amazing thing, but to be in the Power Four conference, like a school like Nebraska and in the Big Ten, and at my age is amazing. And I really think that Nebraska is a sleeping giant. I just think it's one of those places that there's actual potential for it to get to where it where we could be a top 10 program, or consistently. I really truly believe that, and those are the goals that we kind of have here, and what an opportunity for me and for for our staff and for Nebraska. I think it's just, I don't know, I always believe that life works in strange ways, and it always works its way out. And if you'd have told me 15 years ago that I would have been number one in college tennis, and then moved to Israel, and then would have been a head coach within 4 years of my college coaching career, I would have been like a crazy man. So obviously I'm blessed, and I'm just really blessed, and I owe it to all the people that helped me get here. You guys are definitely on that list, and I I wouldn't be where I am without everybody. Ty, my family, you guys, my other coaches that have helped me, all my friends and things like that. But it's now it's time to put the pedal down and do it big time here. So
Yeah.
I've got 3 things quickly. Your girlfriend came to Connor's wedding, and I asked her, I said, "You're tall. How tall you are?" She said 6 feet. And I said, "Start telling people you're 5'12". I coached Laura Hanna. She was 6 feet tall. People would ask her all the time, "How tall are you?" She said 5'12". But the only reason I mentioned that is that if you like something, it's like, hey, I'm going to take that. I like that. Just like Dave Anderson's, you're 6'7", and my ego's 6'8", and we're great. Here's another thing with Ty Tucker: emotion. Emotion is a great thing. So I show up, and Ty's just chirping, and he goes, "I'm going to fire my 2 assistants. I'm firing my 2 assistants," which would have been Justin and Dave, right? Because I'm going to fire them and hire Connor. And he goes, I was just going to play Metkin singles. Connor says, "Keep bugging me. Just play him in singles. Not, you're going to just play him in doubles." But Connor's saying, "No, you need to put him in at 6 and just tell him to get his nose over the net." And he had an amazing year. You know, that guy, he would miss a ball and he'd yell, "Go Buckeyes." One thing with Connor, Ty Tucker said, "Your son is so smart. He knows I'm kind of coming over to give him a hard time." And he waits until I get right next to him and he just yells out, "Go Buckeyes," that every kid's yelling out, "Go Buckeyes." But I would sum up this podcast that your cats were fat because they didn't go outside. I remember asking, "They go outside?" And you said, "No, they don't go outside." I had an Indian kid. I've coached so many Indian kids because of the IT jobs here in the U.S. now. And the house cat versus street cat. I remember an Indian father saying, my kid is a house cat. We need to make him a street cat." Go ahead, Andy. You want to sum it up? Are you ready to roll? You want to sing a song? Say, "Smith, shut up."
Yeah, we can sing that song. "Hey, Smith, shut up." And I know we've tried to connect a couple of your German players with me, and hopefully I can help you guys out at some time.
for sure. Well,
Appreciate all your time.
No,
Yeah.
thanks for having me on the podcast, guys. It's been nice catching up. Steve, it was great seeing you this past weekend up in New York. It's been long overdue.
Yeah, I say with Connor, how's it go? His wife, Maddie, best match he ever won.
That's the best match he's ever won, for sure.
No, so
But
Yvonne,
yeah.
Yvonne usually takes notes, but let's, we actually got to connect with a couple juniors right now anyway. But I really appreciate all your time, and we can come back to maybe we put some of these highlight points from this in the show notes. But
yeah, well, just thanks for having me on, guys. That was a lot of fun. I know that was a long one, so I appreciate you taking the time to do it. But
actually,
you guys
wasn't that long,
you-
huh, Andy? We're 3 hours and 19 minutes, but our listeners, some of them will just listen to this a few minutes at a time. But no, the whole thing we're trying to do is give out content, and you certainly, it's amazing how many pearls of wisdom, golden nuggets that you shared. Yeah. It's great.
Yeah, it's great.
Well, thanks for having me on, guys. That was a lot of fun.
No problem. Next time you see me, I'll be able to stuff a basketball.
I'll show you a few moves, Steve.
All right.
Nerf hoop.
But we're gonna have to see some dance moves next time.
Yeah, you got me out there at the very end. I mean, that's okay.
I got you there, but there were no shakes or wiggles or anything like that. Come on now, Steve.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I missed it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was nice, Andy. It was fun. It was a great wedding. Connor seems really happy.
Yeah, I got some pictures from Ball Life.
No, it was such a tribute to his late father-in-law. Just very
I know.
emotional.
So I had never met Maddie before until the wedding, and I didn't know any of the history of her family. So that was that must be tough, obviously, for her and for the rest of the family. But yeah, well, all right, guys.
Peter, thank you. All the best to you and your family.
Thanks, Peter.
All right. Adios, amigos.
Thanks, boys. Adios.
Another podcast in the books. That was a great lesson for all of us. A journey. 34 years young. Amazing opportunity. And deserving. Certainly paid his dues, but I mean, it's very, very difficult to, and as he called it, it's an honor, be blessed to have that opportunity. Yeah. So our listeners, we told them to get online, look at the Nebraska facility, the Tom Osborne facility, and Merry Christmas. We should have said that. Merry Christmas.
Yeah. Merry Christmas.
Podcast in the books. Wave goodbye to the camera. Adios. Thanks, everybody.